We good? Okay. All right. Good evening. I call this public meeting of the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors to order on Thursday, May 23rd at 6:30 p.m. I would like to remind our community that the purpose of our board meetings is to conduct the business of the district first and for everyone to learn about the district in a safe and productive manner. Community comments is first on our agenda. Community comments are an opportunity for our community to share their ideas and opinions with the board. Input is welcome and valued. It is our duty to keep it safe and respectful for everyone, students, staff, and our community. This is not a time for discussion or debate. If you have materials for the board, please give them to the board secretary, who will distribute them to the board members after the meeting. Letters to the board are always welcome, and each of us reads the input. Requests for information should be requested as outlined in policy KBA-AR. An individual desiring to speak will have indicated their desire prior to the board meeting. An individual with a disability will be given an equal opportunity to participate in board meetings. This may include someone speaking on their behalf if their disability or other medical need limits their ability to attend in person. Board policy also speaks to accommodations available. A speaker will be required to give their name, city of residence, and group, if any, that is represented. If there are more patrons desiring to present comments than time allotted, the board chair has the authority to reduce the presentation time for individual speakers or institute a prioritization process with first priority to students and city of residence. Speakers may offer objective criticisms of district operations and programs that are of a concern to them. The board is restricted from hearing and will not consider complaints regarding any individual district staff member or any person connected with the district. Comments that make a staff member identifiable to the public, even without their specific name, violate this policy. As an organization centered around youth and their positive development, all speakers will model respectful public comment and be mindful of civil discourse. We will keep the order of speakers announced by the chair. So we will start with Leland Pershall. Leland, welcome. If you could state your name, city of residence, and the group, if any, and then the clock will begin.
Okay. Leland Pershall, Happy Valley, Oregon, Adrian C. Nelson High School. Thank you for having me here today. I have came here today expressing the concern with the potential new cell phone policy that was discussed in the sessions about said policy, mainly the yonder pouches, which are locked at the beginning of the day and unlocked at the end of the day. The system sounds simple, but it's flawed. Here in North Clackamas, high school students go between their home high school to Sabin-Schellenberg Professional Technical Center. If someone goes to Adrian C. Nelson High School and have a last period class at Sabin-Schellenberg, the pouches wouldn't be able to be retrieved because it will take a while for the Sabin-Schellenberg shuttles to get off to get into the main building and receive their phones. Phones would be stored at the schools until they're received the next day. Another concern is bus accidents during Sabin-Schellenberg shuttles. If they are locked, they cannot be used to contact parents or 911 in case the driver is out. This would be the same if there was a shooting, bomb threat, lockdown, fire, or any other type of emergency at the schools. Students will find ways around this policy. If we combine all the high school, middle school populations of the students, which I use National Center for Educational Statistics to combine the populations of the districts, 8,500, around 8,500, 6 to 12 students, and the cost of the yonder pouches, which is around $25 to $30, it will cost the district at minimum $212,000, and it would cost max $255,000. If the district decides to purchase the yonders, it would be expensive to purchase, and it wouldn't really work out the greatest. I suggest an alternative to this policy, and I suggest the money would go into some other programs that the district has. And
Okay, thank you. And next we have Michael Corbus. You or one of you speaking for Kylie? Okay, so if you can come on up, state your name, city of residence, and then your time will begin.
Check. All right, Michael Corbus, Oak Grove. We're going to keep it simple tonight and ask again that if you believe in any of the platitudes and slogans you'd like to say, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we want to find middle ground, or safety for all kids is important to us, or diversity is our strength, etc., then you have to create a policy that defines what is and is not allowed to be honored on the walls of classrooms or with special days, weeks, and months. And you need to create a process for getting causes and identities honored on the walls of classrooms and getting causes and identities and people groups honored with special days, weeks, and months. Otherwise, your slogans and platitudes are just empty, nice-sounding words that you use as a club to beat away and eliminate families and students who don't agree with certain things on the walls at this time. In doing this, you are destroying the public schools to maintain the dominance of your progressive worldview and ideology. And I think there needs to be room for conservative ideas. Again, for the third time, we request, my wife and I and many other people we know, to create a policy so it is clear to everyone what is and is not allowed to be on the walls and honored with special days, weeks, and months. Now, some of you, you're getting tired of me, I'm sure. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't like him, which, by the way, I'm okay with. Truth tellers are often reviled in their time. But some of you are also probably thinking he is right that we have ignored and dismissed and labeled conservative and or Christian students and families as a way to support the quote unquote marginalized groups and the progressive ideology. And I hope you're coming to the realization that I am right, that public schools will fall deeper into crisis of mental health issues and lack of stability. Those teachers who were not all that, the timer's not going, is it?
I think there was,
I got bonus time tonight. Okay.
so maybe there was
Maybe you guys do like me.
maybe a minute and a half.
But, and I hope you're coming to the realization that I am right, that the public schools will fall deeper into crisis of mental health issues and lack of stability, which of course those teachers, they spoke about that and I supported that, even though they weren't nearly as supportive of my ideas. I feel like because there's a culture that says don't support that, or it's bad things are going to happen to you. And it was kind of disgusting as that one teacher had emailed me and said. But I am talking about facts here. They're reality, what will happen, and evidenced by their testimony. And so I implore you, don't be fearful anymore to speak out on this. If in order to protect yourself, you have to trash me just before you then say the truth, go ahead. Something like that, Michael Corbus is an idiot, but he does have a point. Please do it. Otherwise, I am telling you and will prophesy, it's a strong word, but I will prophesy that the public school will lose more and more families and teachers. We just had our daughter's teacher retire.
Right. I'll go ahead and start you again then. 3 more minutes. You signed up for yourself as well. Just state your name again and city of residence.
Michael Corbus, Oak Grove.
And we'll start 3 minutes again. All right, thank you.
And this is what's going to happen is you'll lose more and more teachers. You'll lose more families, conservative and Christian families who feel pushed away and not heard, and progressive only ideology. I'm not saying we need to get rid of progressive ideology, but let's have an equal representation of conservatives as well. But if you only focus on that ideology, it will destroy the public schools. And I'm telling you, it will do it. And I implore you to make a change and follow the phrases you say: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, that's one you guys have been pushing for years. And conservatives, you know what we think about that? I said this before, it's divide, exclude, ignore. That's what it's felt like. All right. If you want to hear somebody's lived experience, that is what it's felt like. And many people, unlike myself, they just say, I'm leaving. They don't come to meetings like this. They say, I'm going to leave. I'm leaving the public school. It's not a safe place for my kids. But I'm here coming week after week or meeting after meeting and asking you to just to be willing to honor ideas that maybe are not yours, or political views, or lifestyles, or people who believe differently than you. That should not be that hard. And have diversity of thought. Diversity, skin color, background, those are all important things. But you need to honor diversity of thought. And once again, I say, oftentimes, I've seen this with a board member here, and I've seen it with a lot of people who have progressive ideology. The president of the United States said to himself, if you don't vote for him, you're not black. He said that. I heard a board member say something similar. She said, somebody of color is not a black voice, because she was running as a conservative. That is racist. So let's have diversity of thought. Let's allow people to believe and think differently than you do. And it will ultimately save the public school from falling into a mental health crisis and losing stability. So thank you.
Can we check that? What's happening with the timer? It was, okay, all right, okay. And our last speaker tonight, Brandon, Germany. Please come on up and state your name, your city of residence, and any group that you represent. And then the clock will begin.
Excuse me. Sorry. I always forget to bring water. Sorry. Brandon, Germany, Damascus. I've been asking you guys for months to stop creating a hostile environment for the minorities by mocking their religion. It has been said that pride flags are not discrimination against Christians, but I've clearly made the case to you all, either through writing or through speaking here, that pride flags are antithetical to the Christian religion. Christians oppose homosexuality and transgenderism. They oppose it because God said in his word that these activities are morally wrong. I've had to prepare my 4-year-old daughter, who will be attending Vern Duncan next year, for the bullying and hate she will receive because of her religion. I've been teaching her that there are only 2 genders. I have been teaching her that homosexuality is morally wrong and that God's word is true. I know you guys don't like that, but unfortunately, in the state of Oregon, Christianity is still a protected class. I've taught my children to love God and love his word, which means by necessity that they must oppose homosexuality and transgender ideology. They believe, because of their religion, that LGBT lifestyles are morally wrong, and your teachers who put up pride flags say that LGBT lifestyle is morally good. Friends, these 2 positions cannot go together. Your website says that the district prohibits discrimination on any basis protected by law, including religion. And I just want to ask you guys, what are you doing to make sure that that actually happens? Because like Michael said, I have lived experience. My son has lived experience of being oppressed by students and teachers because of what he believes. Your board policy AC says that the board encourages staff, students, families, and the public to respect all individuals and the diversity of our community. Friends, your teachers tell my son that he is morally wrong every single day through their pride flags. It does not respect the diversity of our community. To make a point, I don't actually mean this, but I would love for a Christian teacher to put up 1 Corinthians 6, which says, "Don't you know that the unrighteous will not inherit God's kingdom? Don't be deceived. No sexually immoral people, idolaters, adulterers, or the homosexuals will inherit the kingdom of God." Some of you used to be like this, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of God. Friends, how well would that go over? Anarchy. Anarchy. Guys, the LGBT community fights against Christians, and Christians fight against the LGBT worldview and ideology. There's no neutrality. There's no neutrality. One will be supported and one will be suppressed when you put up pride flags. Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed during community comments are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the North Clackamas views or positions of the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors. We have also received emails an email in gratitude for the Nelson High School athletic trainer, and then a question about the average age of our buildings and our long-range facility plan. And next, we'll have our native land acknowledgement. We will begin. Vice Chair Wei will lead the acknowledgement this evening.
Good evening. We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we call the North Clackamas School District, rest on the traditional and indigenous lands and village sites of the native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Malala, and the Clackamas. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn, work, and be a community on this land, and we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region. We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that have affected Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future, and honor the resilience and revitalization of our Indigenous and Native communities. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you. We will now have our flag salute. Please rise. Director Wachter, will you lead the Pledge of Allegiance this evening? In the board packet, you will find the minutes of the May 9th, 2024 meeting of the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Dobson, second.
Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. All right. Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair Wei and seconded by Director Dobson. Is there any discussion? I will call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. In the board packet, you will find the minutes of the May 19th, 2024 executive session of the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session for May 19th.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly moved by Director Wachter and seconded by Director Wei. Is there any discussion? I will call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Our consent agenda tonight includes employment changes, long-range facility plan for capital improvements, and CARE community after-school relationship enrichment program fees. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda, employment changes, long-range facility plan for capital improvements, community after-school relationship enrichment program fees or CARE.
Is there a second?
Wachter, second.
It's been properly moved by Director Dobson and seconded by Director Wachter that we approve the consent agenda. A call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Pride Month Proclamation. Vice Chair Wei will begin reading the proclamation.
Whereas North Clackamas Schools shares in the belief that diversity is our greatest strength, and our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus LGBTQ plus students and staff have the same rights guaranteed to their peers, and
whereas each year, the month of June honors the 1969 Stonewall riots in Manhattan, and the National Education Association has included LGBTQ plus Pride Month in its list of commemorative months since 1995, and
Whereas we believe, like Jason Collins, the first openly gay major American sports athlete who said, openness may not completely disarm prejudice, but it's a good place to start. And
Whereas LGBTQ plus youth are almost 5 times as likely to have attempted suicide compared to straight cisgender youth, and each episode of LGBTQ plus victimization, such as physical or verbal abuse, or verbal harassment, or abuse, increases the likelihood of self-harming behavior by 2.5 times on average. And
Whereas a national study found that 40% of transgender adults reported having made a suicide attempt, with 92% of these individuals reported having attempted suicide before the age of 25. And
Whereas having a gender sexuality alliance reduces a child's risk of attempting suicide by 50%, and students at schools with gender sexuality alliances experience less bullying around gender nonconformity. And
whereas federal law guarantees students the right to form gender sexuality alliance clubs where other non-curricular clubs exist, and our community is better because of the diversity of our population. And
whereas inclusion is a core value of our district, and the school board is committed to helping end the crisis of suicide in our community by creating a safe and welcoming school district for all students.
Is there a motion to approve the proclamation?
Chair, I make the motion to approve the proclamation. Oh, for the whole, okay,
Recognizing June.
okay. Sorry. Chair, I make a motion to recognize June as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Pride Month.
Is there a second?
Walker, second.
And is there any discussion?
yes, Chair, I'd like to make a comment. I want to make sure everyone can hear me. Every other week, we sit here patiently, respectful of the laws and the regulations that govern our interactions with the community during public meetings. And we listen to grown men assassinate the characters of children, sit in judgment on the morality of children, diminish the humanity of children, and we are silent. Because this is the social contract to which we have bound ourselves. During public comment, the community speaks, and we listen. But today I have been given the opportunity to comment on this proclamation that celebrates the children who are members of the LGBTQ+ community, and I want to say something directly to them. Don't listen to them. You are not bullies. You are not immoral. You are brilliant, creative, kind, questioning, resilient, compassionate, and brave. Do you make mistakes? Yes, because you're human, just like the rest of us, and you will learn from those mistakes as we all do. But your inherent value is unquestionable. And tonight, I want you to hear me say it. The very best research we have shows that including accurate and positive representations of LGBTQ history and people is most effective when it's integrated regularly into curricula and classrooms. It helps LGBTQ students feel safer and more affirmed, and gives them a greater sense of belonging to their school communities. Students with inclusive curricula experience fewer homophobic remarks and are less likely to be victimized or feel unsafe at school than those without inclusive curricula. Including LGBTQ topics in classrooms year-round helps make school a safer place for all students. But all that being said, every year in the month of June, we have a special opportunity to celebrate Pride Month with lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community members, both in classrooms and in cities around the world. These celebrations of LGBTQ joy build empathy and understanding, and invite both our students and our neighbors to see the humanity in each other. I am so grateful to NCSD for its policies of inclusion, and so very proud to serve on this board that continuously affirms them.
Beautifully said, Director Dobson. Thank you. Any other director have Those are those are beautiful comments to follow up. So thank you so much. All right. I will call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes with a vote of 5-0. Now therefore, the North Clackamas School District Board of Directors proclaims June 2024 to be LGBTQ plus Pride Month and urges our community to join us in celebrating the diverse gender identity and sexual orientation that exists among our students, staff, and our community. Adopted this 23rd day of May, 2024. Next on the agenda is Sabin-Schellenberg Professional Technical Center School Presentation. I welcome Assistant Superintendent Yvonne Dibley, who will introduce our guests.
Good evening, directors. It is my pleasure to introduce Principal Ajay Huja, who will be presenting tonight. This is Principal Huja's second year as principal of Sabin-Schellenberg, and his presentation will highlight the significant contributions that the Skills Center brings to our students' academic and extracurricular experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here this evening. I just I can't not take the moment to just acknowledge, I appreciate the recognition of all students and the inclusiveness. That's close to my heart. So I appreciated coming and being and working. I feel much gratitude for working in a district where that's the norm. So I feel grateful to be here. So I want to, before I get started, take a moment to introduce some of my friends that I brought with me because I like to bring friends along. This is Lindsay Kane, who is our new CTE counselor, a new position that we have at Sabin-Schellenberg this year. Lindsay will talk a little bit about the work we're doing to support students a little bit later in the presentation. So this is Lindsay Kane. Back here, there were some extra friends that I didn't know about coming, but I will share the friends that I knew that were coming. So Jaslyn Basalto and Bella Lloyd Bibles, who have just been elected as co-presidents of DECA for next year. You guys want to wave really quick? Back there. They're here to kind of answer some questions if you need to. And then I have Isabel Juarez and Devin Bassett, who just finished serving as president and vice president of our FFA chapter. Isabella actually also served as the district FFA recorder this year. So. And then Lily's here and Leland, and there's Max, and I don't know all our friends' names, but we have some friends here. So, and in addition to that, least and definitely not last, is Angela Wright, who is our building and construction teacher and also serves on our student leadership team. So, yeah, I'm going to go down. Oh yeah, there you go. So I just want to take a second. This picture here really kind of highlights our mission a little bit for me. One of the things that we'll highlight tonight is just some of the opportunities students at Sabin-Schellenberg get that are not just within the classroom, because our experience at Sabin-Schellenberg isn't just about what happens inside the classroom. There's lots of other things and components that are part of that. So right there, you'll see Mr. Robbie Christner and Maya, Bella, and Emma. That picture was taken at the Knife River Training Facility Center in Albany, Oregon. And they competed in the Skills USA state competition and they won it. And they will be going to the national competition in Atlanta, Georgia. The particular reason I highlight this is that their project specifically was looking at how to increase the representation of female identifying students in the trades. So they are in the automotive program and they developed a project to talk about how we might increase representation of female identifying students in the trades, particularly our manufacturing and engineering, automotive, building, construction. So that over the last few months, they were in my office asking for forecasting data, asking me tough questions about how we support students and how we schedule to make sure that we have cohorts of female students. They come in the afternoon every week and they have a Girls Get It Done club where they have female students from that are in the trades there and have a space of affinity and a cohort for them. So I just thought I'd highlight that real quick. Just really quickly, I won't spend a lot of time lingering on it. I just will say that there is a lot of work by many people in our school district to make sure that students arrive at Sabin-Schellenberg every day. One of the amazing things for me is that actually that population that arrives is very reflective of the broader demographic of the high school district. So this is the race, gender, Oh, there we go. Yep, grade, home high school. These are all very representative of of the broader district. So I'll just say that. I want to credit there's work at our staff that happens on that and each of the home high schools and district staff that support that work to make that happen, right? And I'd be remiss in not acknowledging our transportation department because it is unbelievably amazing me to watch that magic happen every day that kids get there and back where they're supposed to be. And I also include here just our population of students receiving special education supports and English language supports. I will talk about that a little bit later. It is very representative of what we see in the district, but that is the focus of our school improvement plan. We've been really working at how we provide better supports for those students in our environment. So. Yvonne's going to take the clicker because clearly it doesn't look at me. So. I couldn't be here without just highlighting again, right? The opportunity and the continuous investment and having career and technical education courses for students in the North Clackamas School District absolutely matters. As you know, in 22-23 for the whole district, the four-year graduation rate was 88%. If a student was what, as the state defines, a CTE participant, meaning earning 1 credit in a CTE course, that graduation rate went up to 93%. And then if they were a completer, meaning 2 or more credits in one of our programs, that moved up to 95%. So these opportunities matter. And I think I want to talk a little bit about some of those experiences that differentiate it from what happens at the home high school inside of a classroom, the other things I think that we provide that make the experience connected and help kids see a path to graduation. So I'll share this video in a second, and I have some of my friends here to talk about their experience at the end. If you want to ask some questions, they represent our school better than I could ever do. So I'll leave you to ask some questions there. But one of the things, 2 components that the state requires as part of the programs and study, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with, but we are required to offer student leadership opportunities to students. Most of those leadership opportunities are met through career and technical student organizations. Some of our programs do not participate in those and create other leadership opportunities. These are some of the ones that we, the bigger organizations that we are associated with: DECA, FFA, who are represented here tonight, Skills USA, Future Natural Resources Leaders, Vex Robotics. And then in addition, there's been a big push at the state to look at creating work-based learning opportunities. And when I mean work-based learning, I mean that is represented in many different ways in our programs. We have our student-based enterprises. The video, which you'll see, will highlight a little bit of the BizMart, which is the student-based enterprise for our business and marketing program. We have things like the client and guest day in the cosmetology program. We have workplace simulations. Recently, our machining program went down to Clackamas Community College and got to work with some people from Boeing on machining a part. Just today, Avery Dennison, which is a local firm that works on vinyl wrapping of cars, was working with our automotive and digital design students on teaching them doing some vinyl wrapping. So I will play the video, hopefully. Maybe Donna will.
My name is Yeva Uritska, and I'm a level 2 business student as well as a DECA officer. So DECA prepares immersion leaders and entrepreneurs in 4 different categories like marketing, finance, hospitality and tourism, and entrepreneurship.
Hi, my name is Max, and I am Business 1 student and the DECA member.
Something I value about DECA is the networking experiences that we get, as well as connecting with new people from all over the country and countries as well.
Something that I value about DECA is the people I've met so far, the inspiring leaders, the best friends, the network of people. Everyone who I've met so far on a state and ICDC competition is the biggest stake that I will want to remember and build a network in the future.
My job at BizMart is human resources, and I'm the lead of our team. And currently we're bringing in people to talk in front of the class from different professions, such as clerks, accountants, and many more. And right now we're just trying to really communicate with people on what we need to do and how to do it in the most efficient way. What about you, Max?
One of my biggest takeaways from BizMart is real hands-on experience on how business works, how to be better at customer service, have better communication skills, and of course, be efficient worker.
My favorite experience and memory from ICDC was hanging out with friends and trading pins, as well as meeting people from all over the world and getting to hear about their experience with learning and their passion for DECA.
One of my favorite things at ICDC was networking with people, meeting the peers all over the world, and of course, Disney. DECA!
And Max is here as well tonight. Yeah, so I just would say that like, we really see opportunities for students to build connections, and then they bring their friends along and they're very connected, and then school becomes a place where they want to be. So we have a lot of kids that want to be at Sabin-Schellenberg a lot of the day, maybe more than they should be, more they should be back in my school, but we can move it forward. There we go. And as you know, many of our courses at Sabin-Schellenberg are articulated for college credit. We articulate many local community colleges. This is an astounding statistic that I learned about last year that I knew it was on a large scale, but I didn't realize it until we actually wrote it down. We had 1,189 students earn college credits. Almost 2,000 advanced college credits were earned. And because when we do that dual credit model, those credits are cheaper to students. Students saved about $226,839.30 on those credits. So it's pretty nice to see. And one of the things too that I've tried to engage this year, I think some of my predecessors did in the past, is have some community tours, right? We've had a lot of interest post-pandemic in what we do at Sabin-Schellenberg. I love going around the community because people are very proud of the Sabin-Schellenberg program. I want to know more about it. So it feels great to tell people I'm the principal. But anyway, on the second Monday of the month, we have tours. Anytime you want to come down, you're more than welcome to. We have interpretation there for community members. And then on our showcase night, we actually had a Spanish language tour thanks to the work of our district liaisons. And this one here is from our first tour. Much to my surprise, I didn't think I would have anyone show up, and there was 80 people at my office that I walked around by myself all around Sabin-Schellenberg, but it was quite a nice thing. It's been a really great way to connect with community. So, and you'll see here, these partners represented were from the first 3 visioning sessions we did. So one of the things that has been a major bucket of work for us this year is that we have a lot of teachers who have been with us for a long time who are close to retirement, and we are really engaging in a thoughtful process of doing some visioning around those programs, right? We need to ensure that the experiences that we're providing to students stay relevant to what the industry needs are, and that we have an idea of how to plan to keep those programs vibrant. So what we've been doing is we've done it with 6 programs this year. You can see automotive, electronics, technology, ag, forestry, education, and broadcasting and journalism. And we have partnered with community partners, advisory board members, alumni, current students to kind of get some like a roadmap around a lot of different components of that program. So that goes from everything to like what curriculum changes we might need to make, where we might want to include some career exploration, what types of technology and equipment we might need to get in the future, how might we go about continuing to diversify the enrollment. Are there other college articulations we want to look at, and industry certificates? So really in those 6 programs now, we have a really clear 5-year plan for each of those programs about how we sustain those things. And we've been able to actually already use our agriculture program to plan to update one of the buildings at the land lab to make it a greenhouse that was allowed us to grow more stuff for the plant sale that just happened a couple weeks ago. So, in addition to the teachers retiring, we do need to find new teachers. So we've been deep in it this year. I've hired 5 new teachers already for next year. We've had I think 5 retirements this year. But one of the things that we were able to do this year, my predecessor, Karen Phillips, many of you may know her, she had, prior to the pandemic, established the Career and Technical Educator Apprentice Program with Clackamas Community College, which allows us to use kind of an apprentice model with our teachers. So we have people in a classified position where they are able to kind of get some on-the-job training and then also take classes through Clackamas Community College while they're doing it. We were able to create 2 positions, one in our automotive and our business and marketing program this year. And actually our business and marketing apprentice, I was recently able to offer a job for next year. So it's been really great experience because we're able to provide them with experiences that prepare them for the job as it is. So it's been a really great thing to have. And in addition, we have really directed some resources at making sure we can retain our teachers, because being a CT teacher involves many other things that are not part of a normal teacher's job, like managing budgets, advisory board meetings, industry partnerships, setting up internships. And so we've been, in addition to what the district provides in the support to the new teachers, we have a mentor teacher for each person within their first 3 years. We are meeting monthly with them. We're trying to give them timely information about the things that they need to know as a CT teacher. So. And our school improvement work really has 3 major focuses this year. The first one being our high five practice of feedback. We are specifically really focused on student to teacher feedback loops and how we can get information to understand the student experience better and use that to change instruction in the classroom. So we have been working with someone who has been supporting us in thinking about how we do a better job of creating community where we can get authentic feedback from students and involving them in different ways, like the advisory board meetings, our visioning sessions, and how we get input about our experience that we have. Like I shared before, and Lindsay will talk about it a little bit, we identified last year when we looked at some data that there were some disparities for our students receiving special education support and English language supports. This year, we've already seen quite a bit of progress, specifically in because we're paying attention to it better, we're seeing the disparity of the number of students failing is kind of already almost gone away because we're doing some better work at identifying which students are struggling and then getting the support they need. And then we are also just really looking at how do we remove barriers and kind of expand options for getting into our programs of study, the on-ramp to those so that they are easier to get into and kids can get a taste of them. So Lindsay will talk a little bit about that as well. So. All right. One of the feedback loops that we have established, these are some students in our digital design program, is that we have a student leadership team. Angela can speak to that experience. But one of the things is for each of our professional learning communities, those teacher leaders come together as our student leadership team. We're working on providing them some professional development and creating a feedback loop with me and Ms. Peachin, the vice principal, around the types of professional development that they need, right? The experiences that career and technical education teachers are different sometimes than what we see in general education classrooms. So we're really thinking about that. And we've really been focused on how they establish feedback loops with their students so that they can improve the student experience, like I shared. And then this is one thing that Lindsay and I were doing actually just this week. We were at Clackamas High School and Nelson High School this week. We have started to track some data around the students that are dropping our classes kind of after the drop period to understand why it is that kids are not being successful in their Sabin-Schellenberg class. So we have been having little listening sessions over at those schools. Lindsay and I got some more insights this week from the Clackamas and Nelson students. When we went to Milwaukee and Putnam in the beginning of the year, one of the things we realized was that students didn't even know that there was support available to them at Sabin. So one of the action steps we took at the second semester was to have Lindsay go to all the semester classes where there were new students on campus and just introduce yourself in the first week and say, hey, if you got a problem at Sabin-Schellenberg, we've got a counselor. You can come find out, get some support. So just making that support transparent to kids. And I will pass it over to Lindsay here to talk a little bit about this ways we're giving support.
It says push, so I'm gonna, yep, okay, great. So I am really fortunate to be able to be the first, I believe, counselor at Sabin-Schellenberg. It's a new position this school year. I've been in the district for a long time at the middle school level, but moving over to this role has, I mean, it's got a lot of new challenges and things to focus on, which is super exciting. One of which is the basic work of identifying students in need and then connecting the dots to build a real support network around them when things are not going well for some reason for their Sabin-Schellenberg experience. So I am kind of an on-call person at our campuses if things come up, which happens throughout the day. Students can have, you know, a rough day, and so we're talking about social emotional stuff. We look at academics and grades. We're monitoring those things pretty carefully with our teachers, primarily grade and attendance data, to try to recognize students early on who are starting to slip, and try to put some safeguards in place so that we can keep them engaged and kind of problem solve around whatever needs they may have. So I spent a lot of time coordinating with high school counselors and learning specialists at the home high schools and ELL specialists to support our students, which is really fun. As Ajay mentioned, the two groups that we are really focusing on this year are our ELL students and then our students receiving special education services. And so that is a focus across the school. So teachers are looking at that data. Other teams are looking at that data and trying to problem solve around what things can we do preemptively and reactively to try to support those groups. Another goal that I have is helping students to understand really well what is available to them at Sabin-Schellenberg and remove barriers so that they can more easily access programs of interest. And to do that kind of as early as they can in their high school career, because the earlier they can get into programs that they really enjoy, the more time they have to work their way through and really build those more advanced skills. So you may have noticed, I think in your board packet, our career tree posters, PDFs are there, and these are large posters that are in our hallways to kind of help highlight the different opportunities that students have, and also helping them to understand, get some idea around what jobs these can end up meaning down the road. And we are going to be kind of expanding upon that as time goes on and talking more about kind of the foundational pieces. There are some new employability skills, or revised, I should say, that the state has put out recently. So we'll be talking about that kind of root system. So teachers are really using those in the classrooms as well, which is great. And then another thing that we've been doing to try to make sure that these opportunities are readily available is we are spending time analyzing forecasting and enrollment data. So you have students that say they want a class, and then you have students that are actually in the class once the drop period ends. And sometimes they're different, and some programs have some disparities that that we're working on trying to address. But we've spent some time working with high school counselors and administrators and kind of diving into that data and trying to figure out how we can make things better. Move on to the next one. With regard to helping students to really access those programs of interest, we've made some adjustments in classes that we're offering next year, and those are on the screen. So these classes are new this coming school year, and they are all single block classes. So they take up one period in a student's schedule as opposed to two. A lot of our classes are double blocked, which can be a little bit harder to schedule for counselors to schedule those. So we are offering these new classes, which is great. And almost, well, half of them, over half of them are open to ninth graders as well. So again, trying to offer that on-ramp opportunity earlier on. Survey of ag and natural resources, and then machining and welding. Those are all going to be open to ninth graders, which is really exciting.
We've talked a lot, but if you have any questions, we're glad to answer those. And students, like I said, are much better speakers than we are. So
Oh, they are.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the directors? Director Kemp?
You know, for those that are listening online and others in the room, I work on construction sites with the trades, and I've heard phenomenal compliments about Sabin-Schellenberg and the instruction the kids get there. A lot of people in the trades came from Saban-Schellenberg. Some of the superintendents and foremen I've talked to actually were teachers at Saban-Schellenberg. And so they know the programs really well, and the people that come out of that are really highly thought of. It's a great career path, good incomes, and especially for people that like working with their hands and don't necessarily want to see themselves going to college. There's a lot of careers, and this is whether you're male or female. I know others have heard me say this. I have never seen the diversity in the trades that I see today on job sites, industrial projects and others, and women in all the various trades, all the engineering disciplines and so on. And I would also say it's the best environment I've ever worked in recently too. So you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Director Wachter?
Did I cut you off? I'm sorry. I really love this presentation. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for preparing this. Thanks for all the students that came out tonight as well to support this presentation. I have 4 North Clackamas students. They have now, some have aged out, some are still in school. They all are competitive about which Saban-Schellenberg classes they get out of their forecasting. It's a big deal at our house. So the competition is fun. Only one of our kids has gotten into culinary out of the 4.
I can't make special requests. Sorry.
I know. But the pizza she's bringing home this year is fantastic. All right. So, I was recently at an event where I have some friends that work for Walsh Construction, and they were excited about the CTE programs at Clackamas and wondered how they could become better partners. So, to Saban-Schellenberg. So, what's the pathway for an organization, a fairly well-known construction firm, to become part of a partnership with Saban-Schellenberg?
So I think really, that would be reaching out to me, or Angela in the construction program. We have advisory board meetings, so I think there's another one coming up here pretty soon. And yeah, we are welcoming and wanting anyone we can to kind of give us input. I have sat, it's been a big learning curve for me in this role because a lot of it is new to me. And this year I've sat with hundreds of different partners, and I've learned so much about what we need to do from those people. So yeah, absolutely. If you have them reach out, we will include them in invites for advisory boards and sit down with them and talk with how we can include them. I don't know if Angela wants to say anything. Yeah.
More than welcome. Industry partners, I have a ton of different projects that bring them in to work alongside students. It's networking connection that we can build, and more of quote unquote me or that professional in there. It's great for the students.
Thank you. Yeah, great. The other question I have is around, I love the partnership page. So that's imprinted on my brain. I saw Clackamas Community College is obviously one of those partners. Can you describe in a little more detail how our program at Saban-Schellenberg connects with Clackamas Community College, and what are the areas of synergy? Can you just give us a little bit more detail on that? And
so there's a lot of areas. So obviously as the local community college, like we are compelled to articulate with the local college if they have a program. So many of our programs are articulated with Clackamas Community College as a first stop. Just prior to coming here, I actually sat in on the advisory board for the Clackamas Community College. They are one of the few colleges in the state that has a career and technical educator licensure program. So there's 2 approved programs in the state. They are one of them. And so I collaborate regularly with those teachers that are running that program. And they also serve on our committee for our career technical educator apprentice program that we have, which is a separate program where when we have that, we can hire people to be working in the site and doing that. I would say we are regularly kind of collaborating with the, Aaron Gravel and Armetta Burney. I interact with them regularly around the programs they're doing. they've had their partners out. I've toured over there. We meet and I work with the people at the Holden Industrial Technology Center quite a bit. So there's a lot of different ways that we interface with them. I'd say primarily around the articulations, and then really we've done a lot of work this year thinking about the career and technical educator licensure and apprentice program, because it's a real burning need for me, right? As we're trying to find teachers to be in our classroom. So yeah.
Super practical to solve that one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Question? Director Way?
Thank you so much for this presentation. And I also really love that the students are there but behind, and also some that are featured in the video. So thank you all for being here and giving this report to us. I just have a question and a comment around the special focus. It sounds like this year in your plan of removing barriers for ELL students and other students that are receiving special education. And Lindsay, I just want to thank you for stepping into this brand new role. I understand that this is new in the school, and just thank you for taking on this task of counseling our students. So my question was a little bit more around planning for family and parent engagement. I know that, in my household, I was an ELL student and often had to be the translator and so many other, things for my parents for them to get fully engaged with my school, with my learning education. So I'm just wondering, where do families, parents come into, again, developing that success plan, especially for those populations that you want to focus helping?
So I can speak to it in a couple ways. One of the things that Lindsay and I have been working with the ELD staff in the district is we are going to be doing some newcomer tours. So students that are newcomers to our district and to our country can come and see, because what we did some listening with some of the newcomer students and the staff really, and that they just feels very scary to come on the bus over to Saban-Schellenberg. They don't know the people, they don't know who's there, right? So we've really been listening to that and thinking about how do we help kids differentiate that experience so that when they come, they really get some really personalized information and a feeling okay, I know somebody when I get there, because that often is a big barrier, right? And then again, I think these community tours have been a real way. We have had many interpretation at many of those, and lots of families are coming out and interested in those things. And I think the more access we make and more opportunities and ways we can have families come out and learn about the programs. We've been working at updating our materials and making sure they're translated and making sure they're accessible to people. And so that's I'll just say a large task that we've been working at consistently. So those are the couple of simple ways, I think. And then we have been working, the teaching and learning department has been really great. Lori Meisner has been working with us. Tammy has been working with us. We've had some training at the school with our teachers to help them think about how do we make an environment that's welcoming in the classroom? What are the kinds of language supports we might need to put in place? And so we've been doing a lot of work around that this year. So we're seeing the fruits of that already too. So
Great. Thank you. And I also just really commend the student leadership groups that you all have, and yay for student voice. And I also love the fact that you are constantly innovating. It sounds like looking at your courses, your programs, seeing what we really need to get our students energized and ready, once they get out of high school. So I really appreciate just the forward thinking, and also continuing to hopefully include students' voices in terms of, these are the additional things that we want to learn, explore. Our world is constantly changing. And so I just appreciate that worldview look.
Thank you. Director Dobson?
Yeah, I have a couple of, a comment and a question. I want to acknowledge that I heard you talk about, losing some really beloved veteran teachers to retirement soon. So shout out to broadcast journalism and electronics. We are going to miss them so much. And then also my question is around the expanding opportunity. And I know Director Wachter has touched briefly on apprenticeship programs in partnership with companies. And I wanted to see what the apprenticeship pipeline looks like for you guys with the skilled trade unions.
Angela, do you want to speak to it? Yeah.
Why don't you come up so you can?
Yeah.
I've had, so PNCI, the Pacific Northwest Carpenters Institute, has recently changed names, Southwestern State something, like 2 months ago, it changed names. And they offer a rising senior summer internships. I have a student actually applied this year and got in. 2 years ago, I had another student applied and got in. So it's a 8-week, it's like day after they in school, they're there. And it's an 8 to probably a 7 to 3 job in the construction industry. But they work the whole summer with a company, and they have this whole interview process. And so that's, if students are wanting to go into the union, they'll apply, interview, and it's pretty competitive. They only accept, I think, 15 currently. And then it's, Oregon and Washington that rising seniors that get to go in. So that's the union. Electricians union, they're trying to get something in. Plumbers union possibly is coming up with something. So I have Gore's Construction I've worked with, that's non-union, but they also, rising juniors. I've had 2 students do that. No, actually 6 students work with that company, who's a local company. The owner of that company is an alum of SSC. So yeah, and more partnerships come in, and that's what I'm trying to build, is more and more options. I'm trying to work with the joinery also to kind of do a more fine woodworking apprenticeship. So slow process, but yeah, it exists. Yeah.
They seem, for reasons, I've been talking to a lot of the trade unions recently, and they're eager, they all seem eager to expand their apprenticeship programs with, help from the state for funding, of course, but ironworkers and firefighters, they'd like to expand and create a paramedics apprenticeship program. So just trying to, gauge interest from Sabin Schellenberg and connecting to those opportunities.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
open to all opportunities.
Yeah. And any of those that, modeling after the Carpenters Union, they have it set in stone. It's been around for a while. Very successful program. So it's a great one to reach out to.
Thank you.
I will also just really quickly mention, I went to a conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was super fun. And it was the ACTE conference, and I ended up going to sessions that were all about apprenticeships and internships. And I have like a million notes on my phone that I have not looked at a ton since I got back, but it's like on my list along with many other really big like ticket items to look at for next year. So that's for sure on our radar and on our priority list, in addition to other things too. But I'm excited to dive into that work and see how we can expand. We have some programs that have really robust programs that have been established for a long time. And then kind of everything across the board, depending on the program. So trying to get some consistency around opportunities, no matter what program you're in, is a goal. So.
Excellent. Director Wachter has another question.
Final question for me. This is probably for you, Principal Huja, possibly for Yvonne or others in the room. Do we have any statistics that we can look back on and see the numbers of seniors that graduate and end up going to work in an apprenticeship that they learn as part of Sabin Schellenberg?
So I'll tell you, even before I was in this world, one of the things that is sorely lacking in the education world is like post-secondary outcome data is like terrible at best. So really there isn't great information out there. I mean, it's always been interesting. Then some guy, there was some marketing guy, and of course it really wasn't what he was advertising it to be. But yeah, like that's something that I really think a lot about. Like, how do we know that we're actually getting kids? And I think I just also want to qualify that with the part of the benefit of the Saban-Schellenberg experience is that as much that I learn what I don't want to do as what I want to do, right? So kids like take a class, they're like, oh no, I thought this is what I wanted and I don't want this. And that's actually really beneficial, just as beneficial as ending up in that trade that you may want to be in. So
Yeah, that's part of education, isn't it? Right? Finding out what you really don't like.
Yeah.
I guess just the bigger picture that I'm just hoping to see more clearly is that our seniors and and once they graduate, that they know where they're going. They're going to a college, they're going to a job. There's a pathway. Both are great pathways, but if we don't have any data around that, it's hard to know if we're really helping them in that successful transition into adulthood.
I mean, I would say at the point of leaving Saban-Schellenberg, kids have pretty well developed plans. And I think that's really reflected in the increase in the graduation rate that we see. The kids are connected. They know what their next step is. That may not be their final step, but they definitely know their next step. I can say that almost every student that I talk to that has been in 2 or 3 years of our program, they have a plan. I'm going to college. I'm going to do this job. They all know their plan for their next step. And that's why I think they're successful. But again, like the down the road plan where they end up, that shifts, right? Mine shifted many times in my 20s. So
Yeah. I think what I would add, though, is that we are definitely focusing on ensuring that our middle school and ninth graders are knowing a lot about Saban-Schellenberg and tied to college and career readiness. And one way in which we know that is because our Youth Truth results have shown statistically significant increases in students saying that they understand what opportunities are there for them in career and college readiness. And I think that's just the job of our secondary programs team, all the principals, Ajay and everybody at Saban-Schellenberg, and just all of the different, and for lack of a better word, like the marketing techniques that are being utilized to really engage students in understanding what opportunities are there. And like he said, there's great value in knowing what you do and what you don't want to do. And what we really settle on is that slide where it showed that if you're following a multitude of those classes, how that increases your opportunity to be successful in college and beyond.
All right, thank you. As you know, I love the programs at Saban-Schellenberg. I think that what we offer is amazing. And I think that being at the awards ceremony on Monday night, what we're creating in that culture with our students, and that was just a room full of seniors, of course, getting awards. It's truly amazing. We need to be very, very proud of the things that we do at Saban-Schellenberg. I also want to say I'm excited that there's a counselor there. So welcome, Lindsay. I know that having a counselor at Saban-Schellenberg has been a push for a while, and I just think it's wonderful that you're there. So thank you so much for what you're doing for our kids. I'm glad you touched on middle school because I do think that's something, and I know that we've talked about this, really making sure that not only do our middle schoolers, but our middle school parents understand what the opportunities are at Saban. So I'd like to find out kind of what is your thought and how we're going, what's the process in making sure that our middle schoolers really understand what's available and how are we getting that information to their parents?
Anecdotally, what I'll tell you is that at the tours, like the large majority of the families that show up at the tours on Monday night are 8th grade families. So they really are, wanting that opportunity sooner, right? So providing those tours had a place for them to come get the information that they want and need around the programs. And I think it is really a focus that we'll have to look at moving forward, right? About how we get that information and what experiences we create for kids in middle school to do that. And I know Susie has done some work with Kim Amador and Brittany Strutz around getting some lessons into the middle school classrooms around like what we offer. They see our virtual tour at different points in their high school, in their middle school career. And I think we can continue to like do better. Obviously, we do our 8th grade tours, which is like quite a production as well to make happen. But I think it really makes a difference. Many of the students that I talk to say, oh yeah, I came and I saw this on my 8th grade tour and that's why I'm in here, right? And again, I think the parents are they want the information, they want as many opportunities. So whenever we make an opportunity to be there, they show up. So like, we are really trying to continue to do that because I think, again, we need to make sure that the information's there and also that they're like comprehending it. So we need to be really clear about what those opportunities are and make sure kids are getting that, because often kids will like we heard it just the other day, like some kids like misunderstand what the classes are. And so the better we can get at having those processes similar at each high school, at each middle school, and how we're talking about those programs, the better representation in those programs we'll get, the kids will get into the right programs, right? So.
All right, thank you. And can you address a little bit about the parity amongst the high schools? Because I know there hasn't always been equal representation. How are we working on that as a district? Especially for the Milwaukee high school kids, because that seemed to be the community that had the less amount of students percentage-wise. It may be different this year, but can you speak to the percentages and the parity around the 4 high schools?
So actually, when you look at that, Gina, it is actually very representative of the larger district. I will tell you that the number of forecasting, that was when I noticed, I can't remember the exact percentage, but the number forecasting for Milwaukee for next year was a significant increase. So we've been partnering with the schools and going to listen to students and making connections with the counselors and really kind of reframing what that experience looks like. Because, when we started to look at why kids were not getting the support they needed, we also realized that like that communication channel wasn't there, right? So part of the reason of having a counselor is to help have someone that is a place for that information to go to, that can make that connection with that counselor, that knows those counselors, that they can pick up the phone and be like, what is this class or what's going on with my student? And, we can respond quicker to those situations. And like I said, we're already seeing that in the data, that we're seeing less kind of kids failing or dropping because we are able to respond a little quicker to those things.
Excellent. Thank you. That's wonderful news. And thank you so much for the listening sessions. What a wonderful idea to really talk to the students that did not stay in the program and really find out what those barriers are. I think that is wonderful. So thank you for doing that. And lastly, I want to thank our community, because we need to understand year after year, bond after bond, levy after levy, our community supports that Sabin-Schellenberg Center. Our community wants it to stay intact. They understand that once we start to dismantle any of our programs there is no going back. And I just cannot thank our community enough for always standing up for that program and understanding how important it is. We are educating kids for careers that don't even exist today. That's what we're doing. And I just think it's amazing, Principal Huja, that you're looking at, we not only have to look at what are we doing right now and oh my gosh, we have to have CTE teachers and we have to have the programs, but we have to really understand what do those organizations and what do those partners need from our kids in the next 5 and 10 years. I just think it's awesome. I love the work you're doing. And I know our community thanks you. And year after year, as we see more and more kids getting so many things out of Sabin-Schellenberg, it's always been such a crown jewel of North Clackamas, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over again because I think it's so important. And thank you for your leadership. Truly, thank you.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity. I love my job, and I will be doing it for as long as you'll have me. So
excellent, excellent. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, yes, and thank you. And thank you to the students that came as well. You should all be very proud of yourself. Your awards night was awesome on Monday. Be proud of yourself and go forward and prosper for sure. All right, next on the agenda is our science adoption grades K through 12 discussion. I welcome Assistant Superintendent Yvonne Dibley, who will introduce our guests. Maybe not.
Sorry, Jeannie, you get me.
It says Yvonne on my agenda.
So I stepped in for her.
So I wasn't.
I know, right? I know.
So
Sorry about that.
I welcome Tammy then, who will introduce our guests.
I absolutely will. We thank you for having us once again. And today we are bringing you our recommendation for the K-12 science curriculum adoption. And with me today are part of our esteemed teaching, learning, and professional development team. We have Associate Director Lori Meisner and instructional coach Megan Sternberg.
You're gonna be our clipper.
Oh,
You're gonna be our clipper.
I sure can try.
Okay. All right. Good evening, directors. Thank you for having us. We're really excited actually to share our year-long work with our educators across the district on our K-12 instructional materials adoption. So you can go in advance. We get to start here. As a school district, particularly as a teaching and learning department, we are charged with implementing our Division 22 requirements around providing students with materials to be successful in meeting the state's standards, in this context, science programming, and that align with our context and our goals. And what I love in this particular little definition here is that very last line about this process is intended to reflect the recent knowledge and trends and technology in the field. And when I think about science, I think that is kind of pretty fascinating because it is an ever-changing, ever-moving discipline to think about this process in. You can go to the next one. And I think our Division 22 comes a little bit more alive when we look at our strategic direction and the compass points within this that are really taking not only the high quality instructional materials, but pairing it with the strengths of our teachers and their knowledge in pedagogy to make instructional assessment practices meaningful for students so that they can engage and strengthen our global and local communities in these areas. And so in the discipline of science, this is really exciting work when we think about engineering and manufacturing and all of the amazing programs we just heard about with Sabin Schellenberg and beyond. And so this really has been the center of our work where we grounded ourselves to think about how are our students, each of our student groups accessing science materials in an engaging way that they're going to be able to carry forward with them. Next.
All right. Well, hello. As I was introduced, my name is Megan Sternberg, and I realize I've not been in front of the board since our last science adoption 7 years ago. So I don't know any of you. I'm like, these are all new people to me. So just to let you know, I'm a former science teacher in our district. I taught for 16 years at Sunrise Middle School and then 2 years at Happy Valley Middle School. And I'm now in my 13th year as instructional coach. And this is exciting for me because when I came into this position, we hadn't had a science adoption since 2000, in which we adopted some textbooks, and it was real sad. So the last 7 years have been really fun implementing new materials in the middle of a pandemic. That was great. And I'm really, really excited to be here now with a new recommendation that will really align, I think, with some of our values in science. So the first is around common courses and pathways. Previously, when I was a science teacher, every school was kind of doing their own thing. We had a lot of real inconsistencies across the district. Kids' experiences really varied from school to school and teacher to teacher within a school. So we really have gotten good, I think, at coming up with common courses, pathways that promote teacher collaboration across the district and allow for equal access to rigorous science learning. The second then was getting common instructional materials. So again, before 7 years ago, it was really varied across the district. We had some schools that had no thermometers, whereas other schools had brand new microscopes. So really making sure that we're having common instructional materials and equipment across the district so that, again, kids have equal access to this rigorous science learning. And then the last one is that within that curriculum that we're giving kids common hands-on experiences that allow every kid to come in and access the content as opposed to relying on what sorts of experiences they've had outside of the classroom, depending upon their particular circumstances. So that's something that we've really been working on over the last really 7 years, but I would say even the last 12 years since I've been in this position. So here are our current programs. As I mentioned before our last adoption, we had really inconsistent K-5 science experiences. In fact, we did not have K-3 materials at all. We only had materials for grades 4, 5, and 6, because 6th grade used to be at the elementary school. And so kids were really coming into middle school with minimal to varied experiences with science. Currently, though, students receive science instruction for 30 to 45 minutes through life, earth, and physical science units. Teachers all have access now to physical and digital materials to support that instruction, and our English language services are integrated into all instruction. Do you want to add anything to that part about ELD?
Just that it provides a really awesome opportunity for language to happen because of the inquiry-based nature of science education. Kids come alive in science. Kids love science, and language happens in science. So it's really fun to watch.
Right. In middle school, as I mentioned, prior to our last adoption, we had some big honking huge Holt textbooks in every classroom, but how that was implemented was really different from school to school, really different types of equipment in schools. But now we have students receiving science instruction that is more consistent every day for 70 minutes through life, earth, and physical science units. And I meet with a lot of science teachers across the state and the region. I think we have more science minutes in middle school than maybe any other school that I've ever heard of. So kids have a lot of access to science in middle school. Just like with elementary, teachers have access to physical and digital materials to support instruction. They have kits that they get, so everybody has similar equipment and materials and teacher guides. And with middle school, we have monthly professional learning. We've had that for the last 12 and a half years. So during late start, I've been meeting with teachers. We have been able to do a lot of professional learning at those monthly meetings. We're really hoping, though, in our last adoption, we had to get 2 different curriculum, because the next generation science standards had just come out. And so publishers did not have full, complete materials yet. So we had to adopt 2 different materials. So we have some CPUP curriculum and we have some FOSS curriculum. And with this new adoption, I'm really hoping we're going to get some more consistency across the system. All right, and then in high school, prior to our last adoption, high school was really all over the place. Like kids were really taking lots of different classes, were getting onto different tracks based upon what they were recommended to take or what they thought they should take. And so we did a lot of work in our last adoption process to get some consistency across our district with common courses and pathways. So right now, students receive science instruction for 87 minutes every other day. Students must receive 3 science credits to graduate. And then again, we have these common NGSS courses, that's Next Generation Science Standards courses that all students take, as well as lots of advanced course options. Teachers have access to, again, physical and digital resources to support instruction. So we really committed to purchasing common equipment across the district so that one school didn't have better equipment than another school. And this year, we added monthly professional learning for high school teachers. So once a month, we meet to talk about instruction and how we're implementing our curriculum for each of these courses.
Next one. So our work really begins sort of at the state level, in that Oregon Department of Education provides districts with a timeline in which to perform instructional materials adoptions. And so it's about every 7 years. And this is the year that Oregon is going through that process. And they really ground districts in this quote that comes from a Gates Foundation article that's linked in the notes of your slideshow about the purpose and intentionality of high quality materials as your strongest leverage point in affecting tier 1 instruction, that base instruction that all students get. And the higher the quality of those materials, the more access students have to the learning at that foundational level, at that beginning level where all students receive it. So it's a nice quote that to inspire a minimum floor of rigor and expectation based on the state standards that leaves sort of no ceiling, as they say, that students can achieve at a high rate and then continue into our advanced placement courses. And so we can go to the next slide. They give us sort of options in which to look at materials. ODE puts together a list of materials. They go through a process with publishers. This year, we were very happy to see the list of materials available aligned to NGSS standards, since those were brought on several years ago. Publishers have responded. And so we spent quite a bit of time looking at those resources. I think Megan has numbers on later on how many we looked at. And so districts are able to move forward with an ODE approved source, or they can pursue an independent adoption where they go through the same rigorous metrics the state uses. And districts will decide that for a variety of reasons. It's really about taking your program's goals and your local context into consideration about what your needs were. We chose to move forward with an independent adoption because we chose to focus on our district goals around collaborative learning and feedback, as well as focusing on our populations of students in special education and English language services. And that is where we're going to go next, showing you what we picked.
All right. So our science goal is to make sure that we're providing equitable access to learn the next generation science standards and really to inspire our underrepresented students to pursue advanced science courses and careers. When we had real inconsistent curriculum and courses across the district, we definitely saw disparities as to who was accessing advanced courses, who was going into these STEM and science careers. So this is just a continuation from our last adoption process to kind of continue that work of making sure that we're giving everybody access and trying to really kind of privilege those that have not been privileged in the past. So to prepare for all of this adoption stuff, I got to do some focus groups in middle and high school. I couldn't get out to all the elementary schools. We have so many elementary schools. So our coaches helped us do some interviews with students. So elementary coaches interviewed 40 students from 4 different schools. And here are some quotes of some things that they're looking for in their science experience. One of the best practices in science education is to use science notebooks. So we had a student here that said that their science journals help them keep track of their learning. Hands-on activities by far was like the #1 response. Like, this is the best thing about science, is doing hands-on activities. And then we've also had kids really talk about that science is a place where they can work together, that oftentimes they're working in teams, they're working in groups when they are doing science, and that helps them learn the science. So this, again, was interviews done by 40 racial, linguistic, gender diverse students from our 4 elementary schools. Our middle school students, I got to conduct some focus groups along with Lori and some of my other colleagues. And I went to all 4 middle schools. We conducted focus groups at all grade levels. And again, there was lots of consistency around working together in a community, working in groups was helpful, hands-on activity, hands down, #1 response. And then there was a really interesting thing that happened in both middle and high school. There was a real desire for doing more stuff on paper. They're like tired of being on their computers all the time. And that actually made me really happy, because that goes with a lot of the best practices in science around using science notebooks, drawing models, like doing things that are harder to do just by clicking on some keys. So that was really exciting to see. So we ended up talking with 26, again, racial, linguistic, and gender diverse students from all 4 middle schools.
I will just add, because these are the ones that I got to participate in. This was probably my most joy-filled moment this year, was talking with the kids and hearing what they had to say. It was absolutely fascinating. I highly recommend it.
And then high school, I conducted more focus groups. We saw a little bit more kind of like in-depth stuff with our middle school or our high school students. We heard things about like problem solving, again, hands-on experiences really came up a lot. And then the thing we kept hearing in high school was around, if the teacher's interested in the science, then I'll be interested in the science. So, and if the teacher will come around and help me, then I will feel like I can do it. And that didn't come up in middle or elementary, which was really interesting. So we listened to 34 students at all 5 high schools for those focus groups. So based upon teachers, and students, and we also got community input. We have recommendations for K-5. So we had 21 teachers, specialists, and administrators evaluate 2 programs for elementary. And the reason we looked at only 2 programs was because we went to the caravan with some coaches and other people and really tried to narrow it down, because it is a really hard process to evaluate materials. So we went and listened to presentations and looked at the scores from the state. And we decided to look at our current curriculum's new version called FOSS Pathways, and another curriculum called Collaborate Science. And based upon the feedback from teachers, we're choosing to go with or recommend the new version of FOSS, which is our current curriculum, again called FOSS Pathways. One of the reasons that we want to stick with something that is familiar is around teacher capacity. Teachers are really feeling overwhelmed with the amount of stuff they need to plan for, and they are going to be implementing new math curriculum next year. So part of this was like a familiarity thing. But the other reason, and the more important reason, is that FOSS Pathways has done a really beautiful revision that has made their curriculum more aligned with NGSS, simpler in terms of the materials management, because that's been a real stuck point for our teachers, is counting and cleaning and managing the kits when they need to get sent back to the warehouse. So everything has just been really streamlined to make it easier to implement. And FOSS has such a strength in their hands-on component. And as you heard, that is what the kids want. So it's really focused on concrete experiences that kids have to then construct the meaning of the science, to build the language, to build the conceptual understanding through those hands-on investigations. It's really strong in its support of reading and writing and listening and speaking. It really emphasizes, again, like building the academic language with the kids while they're doing the science. And then in this particular adoption and recommendation, we're including kindergarten. In our last adoption, we did not adopt for kindergarten because we were just moving to full day, and there were some other like situations in there. So this would bring kindergarten along board with our K-5 science program.
Just to clarify, kindergarten was receiving science.
They were learning
education
science
currently, but they were written by educators here in North Clackamas based on the kindergarten FOSS science. But this will be a formal adoption of this product now for kinder.
All right, so we had 18 teachers, specialists, and administrators participate in the evaluation process for 3 different programs for middle school. We looked at Open SciEd, we looked at Twig Science, and then we looked at our current, one of our current adopted curriculum, which is FOSS Next Generation. We are recommending continuing to use FOSS, Next Generation, as our curriculum for several reasons. One, we are already really familiar with this curriculum. We already teach the earth and the physical science units from FOSS, and teachers have worked really hard over the last 6 years to refine this curriculum, to learn and understand how to really implement this curriculum well. I have teacher leader groups at all 3 grade levels, 6, 7, and 8, a teacher from every single school that get together regularly to look at the curriculum, to make some instructional decisions. And so there is a lot of ownership that teachers have in this curriculum already. And so they really wanted to keep our current units and then add in the life science units. Similar to the elementary curriculum, since it's obviously the same company, the same curriculum company, really does embed reading, writing, speaking, and listening and language development into all of their units. It always starts with hands-on concrete experiences for kids to build schema together. And this would give us just some consistency, because right now teachers are having to toggle between CPUP and FOSS, and that can be both complicated and confusing for both teachers and for students. All right, and then for high school, we had 22 teachers, specialists, and administrators come together for 2 days to look at 4 different curriculum. We looked at Open SciEd, We looked at our current curriculum, which is called Patterns, which was developed in Beaverton. We also looked at Savas, and we looked at STEM scopes. And in this process, we had some teachers actually pilot some of the Open Syed units and the Savas units. And I should say we actually had middle school teachers also do some piloting of Open Syed, and that helped them also decide they wanted to stay with FOSS. But don't let that worry you. The high school teachers liked Open Syed more than they liked Savas. So this is why we're looking at this curriculum as our recommendation. Open Syed is an open education resource that's been in the development for about 7 years with a really robust team across the country developing those units and that curriculum based in something called the Ambitious Science Teaching Framework. And this comes out of University of Washington. And they were the first people to really take the next generation science standards and try to make it make sense. Like, how is this different than how we have taught before? So this particular curriculum is really strong in its anchoring phenomenon approach. So one of the recommendations in next generation science standards is that kids start with an anchoring phenomenon, some kind of puzzling problem or experience or situation to really give them relevancy and context for why they're learning what they're learning. So instead of just being like, now we're going to learn about cells, now we're going to learn about molecules, it's like, here's something you can actually see in the world. Now what's all the stuff we need to learn to help us understand and explain that particular phenomenon? This curriculum, I would say, is the strongest in that particular routine. This curriculum is also really grounded and designed on universal design for learning principles. So you'll see that throughout the curriculum. There's lots of places where it really calls out where teachers need to pay particular attention to the needs of students that may come to school needing something different. It also does a really nice job. It was really hard looking at curriculum because even though we have new standards, like the courses and the curriculum are still stuck in these traditional boxes: biology, chemistry, physics. And it really has ignored historically all of the other types of content we're supposed to be learning, like earth science, engineering, et cetera. This curriculum does a really nice job of embedding earth science into those traditional courses: biology, chemistry, and physics. So these particular materials, we're feeling pretty confident both through print and digital resources, which was something that was lacking in our previous adoption. The previous adoption was all online. Nobody had anything printed, and this will have both print and digital materials to support implementation. So we offered these materials out to the community to review, and we got some responses, mostly from parents. And what we heard in those responses were that the materials that they looked at, both at elementary, middle, and high school, seemed to be engaging for students, culturally appropriate, demonstrate reading, writing, listening, and speaking for students. So there was a lot of overall support for these materials from the community. All right. So the fun part, this is my favorite part, because this is my favorite part of my job, is professional learning. So to support teachers in implementation, we already have been reaching out in hopes that you will approve our recommendation, reaching out to these organizations for full-day workshops to prepare teachers to teach these materials in the fall. So they would have, before school starts, they would get full-day workshops to get to learn the materials and the curriculum a little bit better. We also have lots of regular district meetings. Like I said earlier, middle school meets every single month, so there'll be opportunities to have more learning happen during those meetings. I also have teacher leader meetings that happen regularly, and I'm assuming that that will happen more with new curriculum, just so we can get to know that. We also provide lots of materials support. At elementary school, we have a warehouse system where those kits come in and out of there for teachers so that they have what they need. For middle school and high school, I help get all of those kits and materials out to those teachers and help them make sure that they can get those materials replenished and replaced as needed. And then I'm here to provide coaching support for teachers as well. Right? That's it.
Question time. What would you like to know from us?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm assuming we have questions. What questions do we have? All right, Director Dobson.
Thank you, Chair. That's so much information. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of the hard work that you did, both to research and pilot the curricula that you're bringing forward tonight. I did clock early on in the presentation that one of the issues that was under consideration for at least elementary or maybe middle school was not to give them a new curriculum to learn, the teachers, not to give the teachers a new curriculum to learn. Was that because they are, and you mentioned that they're learning the new math curriculum, is that because you were talking about elementary and they'd have to learn both?
Yes, they would have 2 new curriculum to implement in the same year.
Okay, so, but then that wouldn't apply to the middle school or the high school because
Correct.
they're separate teachers. Okay, so specifically for elementary, then my question is whether or not the FOSS curriculum was the most rigorous of the curricula that you were looking at, or, you know, how big of a factor did that exhaustion, professional exhaustion play in determining the selection?
That is a good question. I will say when we took coaches to the caravan to pick what other materials we should look at, and we looked at like 10, I think. And the only one that really stood out as seeming to be really like innovative and interesting and potentially would really challenge FOSS was Collaborate Science. And when we brought those 2 in front of the committee, and we had a presentation from Collaborate and we had a presentation from FOSS. FOSS actually was way more rigorous than Collaborate Science. Can I say in 100% that there was not some like underlying bias in there? No, but I do think we did our due diligence of looking for materials. I will say a lot of elementary science materials really actually push I don't know how to say this, like they will try to sell you because you can do it quick. There's less, it's short and quick and easy versus going deeper. And things like mystery science, things like building blocks of science, and their whole thing is just like, you can do this in 30 minutes, no problem. And like, it's because it's very shallow. And so I will say, I think the FOSS materials are much deeper in that respect. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's helpful. I mean, if my kids could choose, every science curriculum would be based on cells at work. So, and then my other question around this curriculum is, what are the curriculum extensions like for the kids that want challenges? I know that across the board, educators are struggling, you know, with the workload right now. And that it's, you know, on them and perhaps on their school TOSA to help them sort of adapt extensions from the curriculum for their students who are what Director McVeigh calls high flyers. And so I'm just curious about this new curriculum that's being adopted for each of the grade levels and the extensions that are available within.
Well, I will say with FOSS, just because of its instructional design, there are just lots of places where deeper thinking and extension just happens naturally because it is so starting with these phenomenon, starting with these kind of bigger problems and issues that can kind of go in a lot of different directions. And because it is also really kind of group and collaborative oriented, that's where I think a lot of the sort of natural extension happens. More formally, FOSS does have places in their curriculum where there are math extensions, home extensions. There's a whole like database where they can explore careers. So there are places where that happens. I'll say at elementary school, because their time is pretty quick. I don't know how often they use that, but I will say in middle school, there are definitely places where teachers are like finding ways to provide those extensions. In Open SciEd, which is less familiar to me, but as I've been looking through it, there are recommendations in there as well. Like if kids are getting this quickly, do this. If kids are struggling, do this. So it kind of gives you sort of decision points about like what to do next based upon what your students are demonstrating in terms of their understanding. I haven't looked super carefully to see if there's like a database of extensions, but like in the lessons, it will actually tell you, hey, if they're getting it, here's a place to extend. And if they're not, here's a place to support.
Thank you very
Mhm.
much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Kim?
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying, if there were kids in AP classes in science, this curriculum has the material there for AP students. Is that correct?
So no, these are our core classes that every student will take
Okay.
in the beginning of science. These are courses that are to prepare kids to then take AP. Most AP classes, students won't start taking till their junior year. There are a couple of like rare occasions like advanced AP environmental science, which is accessible to kids earlier on. But those are in addition to taking these core classes. And so if a kid wants to take like AP biology, they will already have taken, if this is our adopted curriculum, the like core biology class to prepare for the AP class or the IB class or a dual credit class.
Oh, okay, so, all right.
Also, Director Kemp, it's the AP and the materials aligned that list is provided by College Board. There's not a lot of they give us what works. Yeah, they tell us what we can use for those classes to be accredited with the College Board and IP.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, do we have other questions? Okay, I just have a couple of questions. Thank you so much. It was very interesting and I went on the websites to kind of look and see just where the overall program is and what they've done. So can you tell me a little bit, I have a couple of questions. As far as like rollout and how many teachers had a chance to do this in their classroom, how many teachers got to test it and for how long?
So in middle school, we had 3 6th grade PLCs. So that's 1, 2, I have to count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 6th grade teachers did the first half of an Open SciEd unit on weather and climate change. For 7th grade, I only had 2 teachers that pilot. Part of it was like, it was voluntary, right? So 2 teachers in 7th grade did part of a unit. And then in 8th grade, we had three teachers do a pilot and as a PLC because we wanted them to do it as a PLC. So they had somebody to like, plan with and such. And then those teachers were able to share with all the teachers across the district to present and share like, here's what we saw as being, the positives of this curriculum and some of the challenges of this curriculum. So that was for middle school. And then at high school, we had gosh, I have to count again. I have the numbers in there, but it'll take me longer to find them. I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chemistry teachers pilot part of an Open SciEd unit and 2 teachers pilot part of a Savas chemistry unit. And then we had 6 teachers pilot part of a physics. Actually, and they're still teaching it right now. So they're still teaching that unit right now for Open SciEd.
Okay, and then how much of this is, and I know we're buying textbooks and, or what are we?
Sort of.
What are we buying?
Yeah, so FOSS are kits. So they're physical boxes with materials in them, and they come with a teacher's guide, and then they come with a set, like a classroom set of student books. In FOSS, they call them science resource books because they're not just like textbook. There'll be images, graphs, data, stories about scientists and engineers, as well as like, here is a summary of the stuff you just learned by doing it. So that's for FOSS. For Open SciEd, those materials, because we are looking to purchase the Carolina version, because this is a free resource. Like we could just use the materials off of the website. But the Open Syed version from Carolina comes with a physical teacher edition, which I have to say, like, teachers are chomping at the bit about, like, having a physical teacher edition, as well as a bound book with all of the student resources. And so we would buy classroom sets again of like the student resources. So it's not a traditional textbook. And that was actually one of the things that made Open Syed more desirable over Savas. Savas was much more like a traditional textbook. The biology textbook had 26 chapters. And you had to kind of decide, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to teach? And Open Syed is designed like a curriculum. Here's a unit. Here's how the unit flows. Here's how the activities flow together. Here's where the student would do the reading. Here's where the student does the hands-on experience. So there will be physical materials that teachers and students have access to, as well as then everything that's online. They both have digital platforms with the student materials digitally as well.
Is there going to be student science journals or student workbooks that we need to purchase every year?
No, that was one of the other things about Savas that was not, they were not excited about that. In fact, the teachers that were piloting that, like the kids had for just the one unit, it was like a workbook that was this thick. And it was really like, it was like I'm like, we cannot like purchase these every single year. That was something that the teachers really did not want.
And then do these curriculums align with all of the science classes that we teach? With the elective type or required type science classes that we teach, does it align with everything that we have, or is anything going to have to be redone or rethought out because of the curriculum?
We're purchasing curriculum for our core next generation science standards aligned classes in high school. In middle school, there's only 3 classes. There's Science 6, Science 7, Science 8. So we'll adopt for that, and the same for kindergarten through 5th grade. So we would be recommending purchasing biology, chemistry, and physics curriculum for high school, because those are the core NGSS aligned courses.
All right, thank you. And I appreciate Director Dobson asking about the rigor and of course, everyone asking about what we're doing for AP. Can we talk a little bit about how is this going to work with our kids that need support and either just special support or they need ELD support? How does this work?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. So this was one of the lenses that we prioritized throughout this process. And so it's a particular point of pride, I think, in our work, in looking at and having specialists in part of all of these feedback sessions and work groups and such, to say we're looking for curriculum that at its base level is supporting teachers in making decisions about how to provide instruction to English learners at all levels of proficiency. And so are we seeing like direction and verbiage in the curriculum to guide teachers to collaborative learning practices, accountable talk structures, using shelter instruction techniques like sentence frames or vocabulary development of both the content standard as well as the tier 2 vocabulary around critical thinking? Are students given time to make meaning from text in multiple ways, both in writing and in orally? So this was really the priority we were looking through, which are also very, very, very supportive practices of our students who are receiving special education services, to say this needs to be accessible for our students, not an overlay after the fact. I feel like FOSS is particularly strong in this arena and was overwhelming with our elementary team, the direction to go for that purpose and with that lens. Open Syed, when we were reviewing products, also we felt did the best job with this, to say we know our teachers need to use their pedagogical skill and knowledge to overlay on the how do we deliver instruction, but what is there as a foundational base to help them and to prime them and to remind them of those instructional moves. So I really feel quite strongly that of the products we reviewed, which is a lot of the reason we chose to go independent adoption over purchasing off the state adopted list, because we felt like that fell short on what publishers had gone through the process with the state on.
And that was my next question so that's why you looked outside of what the list was, because you just didn't feel it encompassed everything we wanted to.
Yeah.
All right.
Also, some of that, so FOSS Pathways was not on the list because it was back when they had to submit last summer, they were still in revision process. So they did not submit for to be on the list. And the same with the high school Open SciEd. So middle school Open SciEd was complete, but high school was not. And so that's why it was not submitted for submission. So Open SciEd for middle school is on the adopted list. It just wasn't for high school because it wasn't quite done. And then just to add on to the question about supporting ELs, we actually just had a meeting today about our professional development for next year. And my whole goal, hopefully next year with implementing this new curriculum, is to make sure that we are planning through that lens, through the lens of our emerging multilingual learners and through the lens of our students receiving special education. That is who you should be planning for. And then you can extend out, right? But we need to make sure we are planning for kids that need that sort of support, right from the beginning.
All right. Well, thank you. This will, if there's no further questions or comments, we will be seeing this at a future board meeting for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next on the agenda is the Nutrition Services Report. I welcome Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Matt McCara, who will introduce our guest.
Good evening, directors. Tonight, I'm pleased to bring forward an informational and annual presentation on the district's nutrition services program. I'm happy to introduce our nutrition services director, Greg Collins, who will begin the presentation with a presentation on the outstanding work that's being done in our schools now.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity to present this evening. Apologies, I went the wrong way.
We started with questions.
Tonight, we'll begin with an overview of our team and then an overview of the nutrition program as a whole. Then we'll look at our student-focused promotions to show how we serve up happy and healthy each day at each of our schools. Then we'll move into some results for our daily counts for this year and a year-over-year look at our meal counts. Then Matt will give us a look forward into the program. Our 6-person Chartwell's Nutrition Services Management team consists of myself, Israel Morales, our Director of Dining Services, Chris DeHutt, our Culinary Manager, Rami Khan, our Production Manager and newest member of our team. This is her first school year with us, and our 2 amazing administrative assistants, Amy Ramsey and Paula Presley. But our in-building team, our teams out there consists of over 110 nutrition services team members, over 130 paraeducators that help run the point of sale system at our elementary schools. The entire courier team helps us deliver food from our 2 base kitchens to all of our elementary sites each day. And that is the group that serves our 29 different locations. Currently, Nutrition Services runs 5 programs with the oversight of the United States Department of Agriculture and the Oregon Department of Education. Those programs include the School Breakfast Program, the National School Lunch Program, the after-school program, which is called the Child and Adult Care Feeding Program, and 2 summer food service programs. Enhancements to those programs include Breakfast After the Bell, Breakfast in the Classroom, the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, and the Community Eligibility Provision, which we'll see more about in just a bit. The Nutrition Services Program is very highly regulated. All of the products served must meet strict criteria to be part of a reimbursable meal. The government regulations include minimum and maximum calories, portion sizes, sodium and sugar limits, required meal components, required vegetable subgroups, whole grain and milk variety requirements, smart snack standards, and competitive sales regulations. To keep the program fresh and to bring enthusiasm for the students each day, we have some Chartwell's designed student-facing promotions. The most foundational of those is our Discovery Kitchen. Each month, we have a different theme that is designed to inspire curiosity and discovery in our students. These promotions tie into our menus, menu items, and marketing at all of our grade levels. Some of my favorite is in November, we have Let's Get Cooking. And I think that's always fun to put recipes out there and to just be able to spend time in the kitchen creating culinary dishes with friends and family and trying something new or perfecting an age-old recipe that I've done a bunch of times. And I think it's really fun to share that with our students. And then Plant Power in March, there's so much emphasis on plants being just a stable nutritional benefit for all diets that it's fun to share all of the new discoveries that have come up with plants and the plant power specifically. So I always enjoy that one as well. Here are some examples of our amazing chef, Chris, exhibiting the Discovery Kitchen at different grade levels. In the bottom right, that presentation at an elementary school was all based around different types of apples. Cosmic Crisp, I think they're the best. That's my personal opinion on that. In the bottom left, it was a corn and pineapple salad. And I thought that was really fun because it was incorporating fruits and vegetables in the same dish. And then in the upper left, it was a more involved Discovery Kitchen with a Baja bean burrito using, it was from our veg out concept with the plant protein of the beans. Next, we have Mood Boost. And this is a fun program that helps students connect the foods they eat with how they feel. So using science-based discoveries, we have been able to point at foods that can help affect your mood in a positive way. And so what this concept does is our characters come out each month and they are on the menu, they're at the marketing at the elementary schools, and it can help the students identify foods that they could eat to help them become more alert or to be more calm. And it just helps to bring them to acknowledgement that what they eat can affect their mood. And this actually won a Best Concept Award. The last is Student Choice. And this one, to me, is something I'd like to expand past the secondary school level, but that's where it's currently at now. And what this concept does is it takes one of the different menu styles of food and, excuse me, 2 or 3 of them, and puts them out there in samples for the students to try and then vote on to get that concept added to one of the upcoming menus. So in one of the latest ones that we did, we had a Big City barbecue recipe with the Caribbean pulled pork sliders and a veg out recipe with the Southwest potato tostado that went head to head with the students getting samples at I believe all of the secondary schools, and then voting to see which one would be placed on the menu. The pulled pork sliders won, and they were added. You can see the informational graphic on the left that shows the month's worth of different sliders and pulled pork sandwiches that we offered to highlight the Big City barbecue. Chef Chris will make hundreds of those samples, and they'll just be gone as fast as she can put them out on the table for the students to come grab them. We'll move on to some results. So these are our average daily meal counts for this school year. The reports were completed at the end of April. And so it shows the majority of our meals specifically for breakfast in the free category, just a very few in reduced, and then a couple hundred in paid. And it's basically a very similar ratio for lunch with just under 4,800 free meals served per day, 338 reduced meals, 2,240 paid meals, 184 dinner meals scattered throughout the district each day, and then a la carte sales at about 3,200. And what we find with driving our program is offering a large variety of popular menu items. Our team members are providing excellent customer service. The district offers very welcoming environments to all of our students. We get wonderful support from all of the district administrators. We have our innovative programs that help enhance the student experience, and the community eligibility program has opened the door for more students to receive meals at no charge. For counts year over year, it's really exciting to show a great uptick in meals served this year over last year. These counts are based on from the beginning of the school year until the end of April for both last year and this year, with just 1 day difference. This year was 1 day shorter so far than last. So it's a really close comparison. You'll see that we had a great increase in free breakfasts. We had a slight increase in reduced, but then you see the dip in paid. And that is from a large shift in eligibility change from paid students moving into the free and reduced category. And then I think it's just about an 11,000 meal difference so far this year in breakfasts over last year. And you'll see a very similar trend with lunch. A very sizable increase in free meals, an increase in reduced, and then a drop off in paid again from that eligibility shift. And then in total meals, I believe it's right around 80,000 additional lunch meals were served this year with even 1 less day of service than last year. So it takes an all around effort to make a movement that large. A la carte, it's basically locked in step with last year, with just right around $430,000. And now I'll pass to Matt for looking forward.
Thank you, Greg. I'll start the looking forward part of the presentation with some background on the community eligibility provision, also known as CEP. This program allows districts and schools in income eligible areas to provide lunch and breakfast at no charge to all students. As part of this program, district implementing it has some responsibilities, namely to serve breakfast and lunch at no charge to all students. In the unlikely event that there be a shortfall in the nutrition program, district agrees to cover that shortfall with any with non-federal funds, although I'll mention later in the presentation, that's highly unlikely. And then also agrees to reapply for continued CEP benefits every 4 years. However, CEP can be stopped at any time. With those requirements, though, there are substantial benefits that go along with this. It increases meal participation and reimbursements. As we saw in the part of the presentation just before this, we've seen a substantial increase in meal counts this year. And with the margin of the reimbursements, it really does help provide more financial stability to the nutrition program. There is also reduced stigma that children, once everyone in a school is able to eat free, there's not a stigma associated with any children who would otherwise qualify in a school where some are eating free and some are paid. It reduces the amount of paperwork for families. When everyone's eating free, families no longer need to seek out and complete a meal application every year. And the last two, I think, are really the most important, that it reduces food insecurity. It helps ensure that no student need go hungry during the school day. It helps provide a healthier learning environment. And there's also substantial evidence that that access to nutritious meals positively impacts academic performance and provides for improved academic outcomes. Currently, about a third of the district falls under CEP. However, there have been some changes on both the federal and the state level that will impact CEP going forward next year. On the federal side of things, the manner in which a district can qualify students has expanded through direct certification. And on the state side of things, the level at which the state reimbursement kicks in has been decreased from 40% to 25%. And a district can mix and match and kind of combine different schools in order to reach that threshold. Most recently, ours was at 30, our percentage was at 38.14%. And what that means is really fantastic news that starting in 24-25, all North Clackamas schools that are currently a part of the nutrition program will be able to offer breakfast and lunch to at no charge to all students next year. It's really pretty incredible news and nothing but positive for our students and our families. We're working on the plans for district-wide communication. We are working to identify what operational supports that will be needed to successfully roll this out. And I'll turn it back over to Greg. Yeah.
Just a little bit more on looking forward. We want to make sure that we're focusing on increasing the participation using all of our student-focused promotions, especially when we're going to have the opportunity to serve all of them at no charge. And we also need to prepare for the opportunity to do that, from the smallest detail to very large details, increasing staffing, additional smallwares, storage space. Everything is out there that needs to be looked at to consider the impact that changing over into this amazing program will do for us. And lastly, continuing to recruit and retain the best team members and celebrating their commitment to our students. Our team out in the field at the schools is absolutely amazing. They do a fantastic job every day. I'm always kind of a bit in awe of what they can do just operationally to feed all of the students every day, but they really are the heart. They bring the heart, they bring the warmth, they bring the fun of the program to the students every day. And I always appreciate being able to take a moment to celebrate that commitment and make sure to recognize them the best that we can. And that's all that we have.
We'd be happy to answer or address any questions the directors may have.
All right, thank you. We need to feed them, and we fed them during the pandemic. We need to feed them. So I am really, really excited that we're going to be feeding kids and we're going to be able to feed them for free breakfast and lunch. I think that's fantastic. I mean, I know it's not free, but we're getting those grants and we're getting that covered. So I just think that's amazing. That's wonderful. All right. Do we have any questions or comments? Director Watcher. Yeah, I do too.
This is exciting news. And I guess I have a couple of questions and then one bigger question. So smaller ones first. Does this expansion in the thresholds to offer the CEP program to all of our schools extend also into the summer program?
Yes. The summer program is
part of the entire.
Yes. Now that schools are area eligible for CEP, they will also be area eligible for the summer program. And I believe after school as well.
So that's even more exciting, right? That's huge. And that means a lot more serving of a lot more food, which will require a lot more hands on deck. Any sense of how much more FTE we'll have to add? And is that included in the reimbursable program?
We do have a plan to add FTE. We're not exactly certain an exact amount of what that will be yet. And I think that a plan to start the year off will likely change once we see what those counts really are.
Okay.
I can also speak to the financial side of things that, as I mentioned in the presentation, there are substantial financial benefits to going to CEP, and that the the margin that we are reimbursed for is provides some additional funding and stability. It's more certain also than the where you're having some students pay and others eating for free. And yeah, in districts where that have been able to go to CEP, they've been able to see a more stable nutrition program.
And that last word, Matt, that you mentioned, stability, is what I'm really driving at. It's sustainable. I'm hoping, because absolutely, this is a huge benefit to all of our students. But how best case, worst case, how long could this be available? And a year, 2, 3, 4 years where we can make this offering. And if we don't know that, what are our plans to mitigate that, so we don't have to drop back into you get to eat for free and you do not get to eat for free, and the challenges that come along, all the challenges that come along with that? What's the long range mitigation plan so that we can hopefully offer this no matter what happens to the future of the CEP program?
The agreement would be for 4 years. And then after that, we would reapply again. What the standards will be in 4 years is not known now. However, the trend, certainly amongst federal and state sources, has been to expand free meal offerings. During the pandemic, all students ate free. That was a substantial success. And I think that the experience of that has kind of led this expansion. Over the past 2 years, we've had about a third of our schools qualify for CEP, and that in terms of stability, that have financial stability, that we are definitely seeing the results of that. You may recall we brought forward earlier this year an excess operating balance, where we've now used some of the excess operating balance that we've accumulated to modernize a substantial amount of equipment in our schools. So it's difficult to foresee with real certainty what we would what things will look like in 4 years. But I'm confident that the nutrition program will be on pretty solid financial footing in 4 years' time, if we're engaged with CEP that entire time. And at worst, should any of the thresholds change in 4 years' time, we would be in a situation where pretty similar to where we are now, which is still a pretty sustainable model.
Thanks, Matt.
Chair Benaloka, if I may, I'd like to make 2 comments. One, I'd like to channel my inner director, Bauer, who's not here this evening, to remind everyone we'll have the opportunity to create a legislative agenda this fall. This would be an excellent topic to help hit home with our legislators to codify into any kind of law that we can about reimbursement rates and so on. And the second piece is, I think I would be remiss if we did not acknowledge we have the best partners working on our nutrition services program, and Chartwell's has been an amazing partner for us. There are a lot of school districts that struggle on a year-to-year basis. We've had consistency and stability, and we're very thankful.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I just have a couple. So the free and reduced lunch applications, we're still going to need those. What are we going to do for kids that need those for maybe help with, and maybe this is better, is it better for you, Tiffany, or for someone? Just kids that are going to need help with sports, that kind of thing, that we're going to need that information.
Matt's ready to.
Okay.
I can speak to that. As part of the the requirements and regulations that come along with this. Once a school goes to CEP, a school is no longer allowed to accept free meal applications at those schools. However, I've been in contact with other districts that have gone to CEP, done a little research, and what we are looking into, we've kind of started to put the pieces together for a method where families would be able to submit a simple form where they would attest that they meet the requirement, the threshold. It's not a meal form, but it applies a similar criterion threshold. A family would attest that they meet that threshold, and then the information would go to both the relevant parties at the school, and also a copy be held centrally for things like student fees.
All right, thank you. And then current lunch balances, because we have a lot of schools that are still charging this year. So what is the plan for communication and understanding current lunch balances from this year and then moving forward?
Well, there will be, even next year, there still will be some opportunity to use those balances at secondary schools. Students may carry a balance forward and use that for things like a la carte sales. However, there are obviously going to be many students and families that want to be able to get a refund on or reimbursement for what they have right now. We have a process in place for that already. There's information on the district website for that. We will be at the end of the year, we plan on providing communication to the families that do have a balance about what their options are.
And then also if they owe as well. So we'll be communicating if they have money sitting, and then we're going to be communicating if they owe money as well still for these balances from this year.
Yes. Historically, the district has, at the end of a school year, we have most often forgiven outstanding balances. And that is certainly a possibility at the end of this year as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. And just one more thing, really about, and I think that you touched on it earlier where you said that, our nutrition services folks are really in everyday, regular contact with our students over food, which is it's such a way to bring people together. What kind of social and emotional training and support are you giving your staff so that they're ready to have and understand what they can do to support students?
That's a great question. I think at its base, we just want to make sure that they're able to have the best interaction that they can with the student. And this really helps with that. The Lunch Shaming Act from years ago has helped with that. So our team really can just focus on getting to know the student, being present for the student in that small little window of time that they have, and not have to worry about anything other than, saying something pleasant to that student. And so I think it's really just them naturally liking being around them and building that relationship with them, and keeping them in the know that there doesn't have to be anything difficult about their interaction. It can just be fun, and wishing the student have a great day, and just keep it really, really positive. So I think that they're in a great place with this new provision to keep that philosophy intact, that they can really be a highlight of the student's day and not have to worry about lots of other types of interactions.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think that that's the financial piece where a student does not have control over that. For that to be part of the factor that maybe makes the cafeteria experience or their lunch experience negative in some way, I just think it's wonderful. So thank you so much for what your staff does and the interactions they have every day, and keeping our kids and of course our staff and our teachers fed in the buildings as well. We appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
I can actually attest to what Greg was saying. As part of my responsibilities this year, I did a number of meal observations, and one of the things that I was struck with and that I remember very vividly is the how often and that how consistent the positive interactions between staff and students was really quite heartening.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate the report and appreciate the information.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is the revised public contracting rules discussion. I welcome again Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Matt Macara, who will introduce our guest.
Thank you, directors. It's my pleasure to also be able to bring forward a discussion item on possible revisions to North Clackamas's public contracting rules. Is a public agency with responsibilities for how we manage public funds and how we conduct business. Public contracting rules provide a foundation for how we can conduct public contracting in a responsible and consistent way. What you're seeing tonight for discussion is the result of a year-long effort led by our Director of Business Operations, Gwen Chapman, with help from other staff as well. Two staff members whose efforts are worth mentioning, but who are not here tonight are Megan Jelly and Leif Palmer. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Gwen.
Good evening, board. It is my pleasure tonight to bring to you a proposed update to the district's public contracting rules. Oh, sorry. It's my first time actually here. I've only been on TV before. Sorry. So tonight we're here for discussion, as Madden said, with the intent to return at the next meeting for adoption. So a little bit about public procurement to get us started. Their public procurement is governed by several different pieces that come together to provide the framework. The main piece of that is the state procurement laws. And another piece of that is the model rule or the public contracting rules, which we're looking at today. The Attorney General adopts model rules for the state. And many agencies, including North Clackamas, larger entities, larger cities, counties, districts, adopted their own rules because that are just more applicable for the situations that they address. The state rules are very generic, and most of the larger entities adopt their own rules. And so that is a piece that governs this as well. There's board policy, there's also federal rules and other funding source rules that can come into play depending on the purchase. Some of the thresholds and policies, processes have a lot of board discretion, and some of them have limited board discretion. And I will try to point out a few of those where that comes into play. So North Clackamas School District first adopted their own procurement rules, or public contracting rules, sorry, in 2007. It's been updated at least in 2010 and 2016, based on my research. And last time it was updated was 2016, so we are well due for an update. Recent legislative changes and updates to the Attorney General's rules which those reflect the legislative changes, necessitate a change to our rules. Our board policy requires that we update our rules when the Attorney General updates theirs. And we are bringing forward what we're proposing to bring forward tonight will need to be updated in the future. It's a document that is a kind of a living document. It continually needs to be updated. And so as state laws change, the Attorney General updates things, we will be back to you again. And probably again before our next bond issue, just because that is where a lot of large procurement happens, and we'll want to check in with you again before that point. That's okay. So how did we come up with these new rules? So we reviewed the Attorney General's model edited rules. We reviewed a lot of other jurisdictions, public contracting rules who adopt their own rules. For example, Metro, TriMet, other larger cities, Hillsborough, Portland, as well as other large school districts. So there were a lot of other jurisdictions that we looked at when we were considering what edits to make. We also sought a lot of staff feedback. We had a lot of focus interviews across the district to find out where were the current rules working for folks, where weren't they working for folks, and where we might be able to adjust. We also have consulted with legal counsel, which is an important part of the process. So we have a sort of a summary here of the changes. Obviously, these aren't all the changes, but there are a few minor clerical things all the way through. Probably the most significant change is a proposed increase in threshold. I'll have a chart in a minute that shows what that looks like, but the legislature recently increased the maximum thresholds that could be used. Those hadn't been updated in 20 years. So it was time to look at them for sure. This also will implement new rules for retainage for public improvement contracts. Retainage is normally held at 5%, and it is withheld from each payment on a public improvement contract. And that money is held by the district until the work is completed on a public improvement contract to ensure that work gets all the way to the end. And so that there's some new rules that we're implementing there. We're also adding a requirement for our 3-quote process that one of those quotes will be sought from a woman-owned, veteran-owned, or minority-owned business. And obviously, if there's not an entity that meets that requirement, the purchaser can write up an explanation about what they did to try to find one, but we will be expecting that as those purchases come to us. And also, it's not in the rules because it's part of our procedures, but in order to underscore our core value of equity, we're also going to be adding to our procedures for formal solicitations, a scoring criteria related to how proposers are incorporating equity, inclusion, and diversity in their business practices. The rules also recognize a change to the state's definition of disadvantaged businesses. It used to reference disabled veteran-owned businesses, and that was recently changed to veteran-owned. So the wording changes for that are included, as well as there's been several changes over the recent years for the process related to architects and engineering services. And this language incorporates some highly technical language around how you can include price in that evaluation. So our rules will now reflect the current state law. And then we have our lovely graphics. So these are the current thresholds that we use at North Clackamas for our different procurement processes. And again, these are based on the state limits, and those were last updated 20 years ago. So I'm going to go to the next slide, which is probably, we can come back to this one if we need to, but the proposed thresholds really just implement the new thresholds provided from the state, and where the maximum limits were utilized previously by North Clackamas, we have proposed those maximum limits again. One of the places that the state leaves completely to your discretion as the board is the personal services thresholds. They provide no requirements for those thresholds. And so in this case, what we have done is take the previous threshold, applied an inflation factor, and rounded that to an even number so that it was easy to implement. And so again, if the board had, that is a choice that you can make there of however you want to implement those. But that seemed to be logical to us to just add the inflation factor, which was pretty similar to what the state had done with their increases. And that is sort of a quick summary of where we are here. So I'm happy to answer any questions around the procurement rules.
All right. Do we have any questions around the revised public contracting rules? Director Way?
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. This is helpful. And I see a 173-page document in here, and so I'm not gonna read that for now. I'll save that for later, but I really appreciate the high-level overview of changes. I just have a quick question. So, it's fabulous that we are seeking at least one quote from a women-owned, veteran-owned, or minority-owned business. Is that the same thing as us soliciting a bid, and that has to come from either of those categories? Or I guess if you just can elaborate on what that would mean for us in practice when, these contracts are coming up and there's, bidding going out. And then I just have a quick question on just the recognition and the change in the definition of disadvantaged business. And it's wonderful that we are continuing to use an equity lens in all of the different contracts and services that are being awarded with our district projects. But my question was around, it would be great to also capture the diversity, the makeup of these places. I sit on the TriMet board, and so we do that at every regular board meeting where we see in just a chart, just a quick snapshot of the organization broken down by gender and percentage that are minorities that work for that place. So,
Okay, I
It
might
could
have
be
a
a good
clarifying question
example.
on the second one, but I'll address the first one.
Yeah.
So on the, I went back to the proposed threshold chart here. And so the requirement for one quote of the three quotes, so the intermediate process here, which is in the center, is where we are required to seek quotes. And we're supposed to seek three quotes at least when we're using an intermediate process. And so what we are adding to our rules, which have not been there in the past, is that we expect our purchasers to find one of those quotes from a minority, women-owned, or disadvantaged business. And so that takes care of that part. And then the formal process is where what we're proposing to do is to have a selection criteria. So there would be, if it's an RFP, there would be points added to it. Most of our large construction projects, which are done with alternative construction in a lot of cases, which would also be under a bond. And so we would come back to you before we got to those projects. We would be looking at coming to ask you, here's what we're proposing to do with the bond projects. Does this meet your criteria? We have very few formal public improvement contracts outside of the bond period. And so what we're proposing, though, is during an RFP process to have a question with points assigned that has them explain, how do you address equity, whether that's pay equity, how do you support apprentices? How do you support diversity in your organization? Give people an opportunity to explain that to us and have us be able to assign some points to that, depending on how they are, how active they are being in the area that matches our values.
Thank you. That criteria is helpful. I guess my comment would be, and this wouldn't be that we would necessarily award points for, the makeup of that particular place, right, or organization, but that it could just be a sentence or two that says, there's, whatever percentage point, gender, just by gender and by folks who identify as minorities, I think would be helpful, so that we can have a snapshot of, oh, this is the diversity of this workplace. Does that make sense?
So when you say the workplace, you mean our workplace of our contractors?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And so we can definitely look into what might be feasible to come back with on that. And so we have a chance to come back to you next meeting. And so we can look into what we might be able to do feasibly.
And I mean, I think I would say it's a lot of it is public information anyways. People are really priding themselves now, I think more than ever, and like having, over 50% of our workforce, for example, identifying as female, or people of color or whatever it is. And so, we can even probably Google that information, but it would be great to embed that as a part of the, just, again, looking at the ecosystem of these services that we are trying to assess.
Thanks. Yes.
All right. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Director Wachter.
Not so much of a question, but maybe a request for, I mean, this is probably along the lines of where Kathy is heading, is these formal major RFP, let's build a new school projects. Could we include some language? Could we include some rule making around a general contractor that has a certain percentage of BIPOC owned subcontractors or trades that could be participating in a project that, let's say, a major GC bids on for North Clackamas schools? Could we dig to that level of adding support for equity and minority-owned businesses as participant in those big, massive projects?
And we definitely can. We have not addressed that in these rules because we have some time before the next bond. I would anticipate we will be back before you in planning for the next bond to discuss just that and how we want to incorporate. I would hate to guess what the environment will be like in 2 or 3 years. I'd rather, because we don't have construction projects that are really large enough during the non-bond time. So what we were hoping to do is to come back at that time and really talk about what makes sense at that time, so that we're not maybe implementing old thinking and we're implementing current thinking.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this will be brought back at a future board meeting. All right, we are on to the next on the agenda is the contract award for the Yonder Phone Pouches Secondary Schools, grades 6 through 12 discussion. I welcome Assistant Superintendent Yvonne Dibley, who will introduce our guest.
Thank you. As we know, the well-being of our students is fundamental to their academic and personal development. In light of increasing challenges faced by students today, it's imperative that we intensify our efforts to support their mental and emotional health. Dr. Ryan Richardson is joining us this evening on this next agenda item on behalf of the secondary programs team. And along with him is Principal Kelly Rhea, who is also here present to answer any questions from her building administrative perspective. So with that, I have Dr. Richardson.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. I have gifts. And I'd like to show you one of these, but I'm going to ask that you refrain from playing until we get to that part of the presentation. But if Donna could maybe help me out. I also want to recognize it's been a long night, and I'd love for us to practice a little moment of embodiment. And I guess what I would ask is that we all just take a couple big breaths. Thank you. So again, thank you. My name is Ryan Richardson. I'm Associate Director in Secondary Programs. I also serve as the District Athletic Director. I've been an administrator in the district, serving middle and high schools as assistant principal or principal. I've taught in the district. And maybe most importantly, I'm a father. And I bring all those hats to this conversation. And I've had so many conversations about this topic of supporting teen wellness with our community, our administrators, our teachers, and our students. And this first slide is very important. That is the topic, is supporting teen wellness. But I want to talk about and share a little bit about what we've learned and the research along the way. Maybe.
I got
you. Hey, there we go. Thank you. So I want to share two bits of research that are driving a lot of this work, although you're going to see a lot of research here in a moment. The first is from Dr. Jean Twin. She's published more than 180 scientific journals and articles, and spends a lot of time looking at digital media use and well-being. She looks at this from a really big and broad perspective, globally and nationally, what's going on with our culture and our society. Also alongside that is Dr. Doreen Dodgen McGee. She wrote the book Deviced. She's actually local. She's visited one of our schools in the past. And she's a psychologist that looks at the individual level and the brain level and what is going on with these devices and how is it impacting our lives, not just specific to teens. Before I flip to the next slide, I do want to warn folks, the next couple slides after this are talking a little bit about suicide rates and depression, and I know those can be difficult topics for folks. And so whether they're watching at home or on video or here live, I just want to mention that before I move forward, that we'll just spend 1 or 2 minutes on those topics as we transition through. I want to take us back to a particular time in our lives. It was 2012, and this is the time when the majority of households own a smartphone, and 50% of teens are on social media every single day. Fast forward to 2013, that number moves to 75 to 80%. And what that means is the market is essentially saturated by social media and cell phone use. So this is a graph that shows suicide rates in Oregon over time. You'll notice that the graph stops at 2019. It starts in 2003. This is death rates per 100,000, and it's 20 years of 24 age and younger. So this is our school age children and just after school. I want to highlight where 2012 is. The decades before and the years after, the average rates annually are 8.1 compared to 13.2, but more alarming is the trends that we're on. Starting in 2012, I want to mention that we've doubled, tripled, sometimes quadrupled our educational resources and our funds to support mental health, and yet we are struggling to keep up. Dr. Jean Twenge talks about living in a pre-pandemic world, and that we often talk about a post-pandemic world. She argues we've been on this track for quite some time, and that the pandemic certainly didn't do us any favors, but the world that we're living in now was predictable before and after the pandemic, and we need to do something different. This graph shows school loneliness. It's 5 points of time, but I want to highlight 2012. These are self-reported school loneliness in some of the busiest places in our lives, schools. I don't need to draw trend lines for you because it's clear. This graph shows percent of girls ages 13 to 17 with a depressive episode. The light section at the bottom of the graph is actually hospitalizations. Once again, there's 2012, the trends before and the trends after. Our girls are exposed to social media in ways that are impacting them in very significant ways, and this graph speaks to that. We are an education system, so it's worthy of talking about assessment scores. This is the National Assessment for Educational Progress. Consider it a national dipstick on how our education systems are doing. The dotted line goes from 1971 to 2004. It turns into a solid line. That's simply because that's when the assessment itself changed a little bit. On the top is reading and on the bottom is math. What you'll notice if I highlight the section from 2004 on is in 2012, we see the trend lines and then the trend lines after. In fact, since 1971, this is the longest decline we've seen in this assessment. Something changed. It is hard, and you would be hard pressed to find something good for our teens that is happening since 2012, if you look at any longitudinal study. So I want to suggest that we do have a bit of research that can connect these things. First, with phone use, we know there's increase of less sleep, less time with friends, and that is a recipe for increase in mental health concerns. I'd like to share with you the idea of being phubbed. Being phubbed, sorry. You just got phone snubbed. It's the idea that you here are less important than what is here. And our teens are experiencing all the time. And by the way, I am guilty of it. Our adults are guilty of this as well. This is not a teen issue. This is a society issue. But I will tell you the response that teens do when they receive this treatment, they grab their phones and dive right into It may increase or may be a factor in our school loneliness. Finally, we often are trying to enforce rules around phone use and devices, and we have to take phones away or ask kids to put them away, and it leads to power struggles. We are desperately trying to create relationships for our kids, and in one foul swoop, in one moment, we can walk backwards months of time sometimes. I'll share with you a funny story. This is a student who drew a picture. It's connected to a thank you note to their teacher, interestingly enough. But they drew their teacher with bulging eyes and sharp teeth. And the caption on this photo says, "Miss Smith, looking at you on your phone." I think it was done in jest, but it kind of makes me sad thinking that this is how our students see us when we try and enforce this rule. The thank you notes itself said, "Thank you for always being there for me, even when I was crying, when I had my phone taken away from me." Our kids are connected big time. So a few other bits of stats before we move on to next steps. Our teens are spending 9 hours a day on screens, and this is not including educational-based activities. I want to talk a little bit about social media. This is Frances Haugen. She was a digital engineer for Facebook. She ended up in front of lawmakers and was the whistleblower that ended up in the news. She talks about the algorithms that reward engagement. In other words, whatever social media companies can do to keep us all, not just teens, connected to their device, they will go to great lengths to do so. And it's an engagement-based formula that helps sensational content such as posts and feature rage or hate or misinformation. Those are the posts that spread far and wide. My kids are young. They're not dealing with social media right now, but they will potentially, eventually, although if I have something to do with it, they may never. But I trust my kids. They're actually quite responsible. I trust most of our kids. I do not trust the algorithms to select appropriate content for our children. And that is what is happening. It is not up to our kids to decide what they like or don't like. They are being exposed to content, whether they like it or not, to see if it is addictive and if they're interested, and they're testing it out. So we need to align our research with the why. The social media use is more likely to increase depression, and kids and teens have the strongest link to depression. You'll likely hear from many people that are not depressed and are doing very well. And I get that, and I understand that, but these are large trends that are proven through research. The apps and algorithms are designed to pull people in, and it gives kids a false sense of multitasking. Oh yeah, I'm here, I listen, I'm with you. Not all the time. And many are advocating for a minimum age increase, although I am not holding my breath for these social media companies to do anything about that. I want to talk about another issue. This is Dr. Doreen Dodgen-McGee's work, and she talks a lot about disembodiment. I appreciate the fact that we took a breath and listened to our bodies there for a moment before we began. But often when we ask questions like, how was my sleep? Where should I go? What should I do? How do I feel? There is an app for that instead of checking in with how we're doing. And I think this is deeply connected to our teens and the issue of who I am. And when you ask me for my phone to put it away, you're asking me to potentially put a part of myself away. We need to change this equation. We need to change this story. So yeah, we are talking a little bit about a phone ban. And many people might argue this is a step too far, but legislation is coming around all over the country, all over the world. We know enough information to do better. There are 4 states that have already legislated this away. There are countries that are legislating this away to say there's no place for cell phones in schools. France, Italy, Finland, Netherlands, and Australia, just to name a few. But people quickly ask, in all of the community conversations that I've seen, what about an emergency? So I'll say 2 things about that. Number one, I too am worried about the emergency that I displayed on the first few graphs of this presentation. But I also understand where they're coming from as a parent. And we have to address the fact that people want to know what happens if the school becomes unsafe. So I'll say a few things about this. In the event of a school-based emergency, we have to have the full attention of our students for instructions. Distracted students are not good in the event of a lockdown situation. And if we have too many calls or texts, this can jam up the system. It can make it very difficult for first responders to communicate with us. Using social media during a crisis, it can actually inform the people that are trying to cause chaos. And often that's what it is. It's a perceived issue of fear and danger and not a real one. And I'll add to this, during a lockdown, worst case scenario, the chances are we might be in a room for a while. So I will just add, we are a one-to-one device, and we do have access to email. We may have to retrain our community and students that if you are in a situation where you are safe, you are calm, it is quiet, you can send that email that says, Mom, Dad, I'm sitting in math class, lights are out, and we're waiting for future instructions. I love you. This is not a perfect solution. I fully understand that. And I'm happy to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the actual solution, but these are the realities that we have now. But when we start going down that track, we quickly get down a track. And I want to bring us back to the idea that this is not about punishing kids. This is not about judgment of the decisions that people are making at home or at schools or in classrooms, but rather this is providing students an opportunity to step away from their digital lives and be fully present together. This is the vision that I have and that we have in this district for our community. That we can step away from distraction and isolation. We can step towards interaction and connection. That is what I want for my own personal children, and it is what I want for every single one of the children that are in this district. We have also done some research locally. We've conducted a request for procurement and to see what are the tools that are out there that can help us deal with this issue. And yonder pouches came up, and I'm going to talk about them in just a minute. But for now, let's talk a little bit about some survey data and some conversations that we've had. We have had adult surveys sent out across the district. We've had 863 responses. 297 of them have been from staff and 566 have been from guardians and community members. In addition, we've had 805 student responses over the past few months. We've had 8 different community events where people had an opportunity to share their story and conversations about their relationships with phones. And we've been to 9 different school staff meetings to have these conversations with our staff and community and secondary programs. And students are having many, many conversations in classrooms. I have to step aside and put together my nerdy math hat for just a moment. These are statistically significant figures, folks. This is 95% confidence level rate within a 3% margin of error. This is legitimate information that is predictable, and our students are talking to us. You have some information about the community. I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the information that our students are sharing. So first of all, 86% of our students are telling us that they are using their phones during class for non-academic reasons. This is not a huge surprise for any educator, for sure. 20% of them are using them every day. 25% report using them 4 or 5 times a week. But what's interesting is the reasons that they're saying, which is 52% texting friends, 67% texting family, 31% on social media, 16% are saying they're playing games in classes. Here's an interesting one. 36% of our kids are telling us they are negatively impacted by other students using their phones in class. There's a story out there that says, hey, you do you and I'll do me, but this is not fair to 36% of our students that are being distracted by others. And finally, we asked about the negative impacts that students are facing. 23% of students in our district that responded to this are telling us they have negative impact on their friendships. 49% are telling us that their cell phones are bringing a negative impact on their grades. 19% are telling us that cell phones are having a negative impact on their attendance. 24% a negative impact on family relationships. And 47% of the students are telling us that their mental health is negatively impacted by cell phone use. These are our kids in our community, and they are talking to us. So, the problem. Our relationship to technology and our usage is leading to further isolation and depression. It's hindering our engagement with the world around us. And so we went and we talked with our communities about these issues and these problems. And what we did is we asked them, we have to align whatever solutions we have to what we think the causes of the problem are. So we asked them, what do you think the causes are? And what happened is across this district, there are hundreds of sticky notes, and they say things like this. One person in the room might have said, it's impossible to consistently enforce. It's a flood. Somebody else in the room on the other side says, treat it like other addiction. We don't let them vape in class. Somebody else writes down, this has to come from the top. And somebody else says, lack of policy and follow through from our schools. Well, we have ourselves a theme. This is around policies, rules, and enforcement. And around the district, there are theme after theme that was popping up, and I want to share those themes with you today. One of the themes was around addiction and habits. Another theme was around social pressure. Another was this idea that it's just easier, or we can cope or numb the world around us if we turn to our device. Another, instant gratification. Not so instant in that case, but that's okay. No clear policies or accountability, outside influences that are impacting us, or a lack of community in our school system. So now we look at the solution, back to that RFP. So I want to share with you Yonder. Yonder is a pouch system. Every student would be issued their pouch. You can play now. Every student would be issued their pouch. And just like a Chromebook, it belongs to the school, but the student would keep it. It's their responsibility. They'd come into school every day. They just lock it and they seal it. I can't get into it. I've made a decision in the morning that I'm going to commit to this. I know where it is. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. At the end of the day, these are posted all over the school. And I want you to see this part. At the end of the day, these are posted all over school, and staff come and simply put that up there so that students can come by and unlock it and be on their way. So the question is, does this solution match up with what we think the problem and the causes are? So let's talk about that really quickly. So these are some of the root causes that we are theorizing is going on. So the question is, will Yonder help? Will it help with addiction and habits? I think it will. Will it help with social pressure? Well, imagine a space where all of our community is going to be off and away. Yeah, I think it will. Instant gratification, we're going to have to find other ways to gratify ourselves. I don't know that gets clearer policy enforcement than a pouch. The idea of ease and coping and numbing, well, we're going to have to find healthier ways to do that. And there's two up there, outside influences and a lack of community that we need to pay attention to. My conjecture and my hope is that these will help, but we also have to put some effort into those areas as well, and that's okay. What I believe for sure is that Yonder is going to help us move forward and that this is a worthy endeavor for our district. These are articles that support the use of Yonder and support the research that I've shared. There are other ways to engage in this conversation with books or documentaries or things like that, and I want to put that in front of you. But for now, I want to see what questions you have. I have Kelly Rhea here, who's an administrator and principal, who's devoted a lot of time and energy into making schools a phone-free space. And I'd love for her to have the opportunity to address any questions. And obviously, Dr. Dibley here to share a little bit about the big picture if you have questions for us. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And it's a late evening. We've had a lot on the agenda. I appreciate everyone's patience. If we have a lot more discussion than we can get through tonight and a lot more questions, perhaps we can even schedule a work session. Okay, but is there any burning questions that you'd like to talk about this evening while we have them here? All right, Director Way.
I really appreciate this. Thank you. I grew up in a generation where we like overnight, the internet, the social media, it just took off. And so I can closely relate to how things have changed. I'm sure all of us have. But I have just been in a very unique position to, again, be in that generation of we didn't none of us had cell phones. And then all of a sudden, 5 years, my siblings are all on their phones and, the younger generation. So and I do want to be mindful of time, and I really appreciate more of a work session discussion around this. But I think my only comment would be to continuously engage our students and our families and our parents behind this, because I think all of the things that you were saying is spot on. I think we are living in a culture where technology can, there's a lot of negative effects when it comes to just being on our cell phones all the time, right? So I appreciate you bringing this forward. And again, like we need to have, I think, buy-in from our school community around this. It sounds like teachers are on board with this. I don't blame them. But you know, the real end users here are the kids, right? And the students who are going to feel that pressure of like, oh, what am I like? What are you asking me to do? So I just encourage this group, and I know you're already doing the surveys and the engagement, which is great, but let's continue to talk to them actively about this idea and this concept. And it would also be really great to, have more students really get behind this. I think as adults, we get it, like I get this, but, again, I think the empowerment and the buy-in, I think would really serve us well if we get some students to really get behind this and also understand why this is important for them and their learning and for the school experience.
Can I comment to that? I want to comment to that one thing to note is that our students don't know what it feels like to have a phone-free environment. Until we provide them the opportunity to experience that, I think we're going to have a hard time getting students through a presentation of sorts or giving them articles and statistics. At least I know with the middle schoolers I work with. For them, a lot of their learning is experiential. And Alder Creek in the past few years, the first year as Alder Creek, I was so shocked at how negatively impactful student phone use in school was. And we worked really hard as a staff, and we continue to every day. It takes a lot of adult resource to currently right now have what we call an off and away all day practice. And we have seen such a huge change in our school climate and culture among our students. Like our students at lunchtime, they're interacting with each other. They're playing games, they're going outside and they're playing soccer, which is not something we were seeing. I was seeing in my first year when we weren't enforcing this policy as intensely as we are now. And I will have students on a regular basis, anecdotally, who will be like, oh, it's so much better for folks not to have their phones, or parents thanking us for making events at school phone free. And so I just want to offer that idea that our students, until they experience the joy and the connection and a different way of being with each other in a school environment, we may have a hard time getting them to buy in until we can show them what it can feel like and look like.
All right, thank you. Director Wachter?
Piggybacking on that, also being mindful of time, one of my favorite times every year is to go camping with my kids, where there is no cell phone access, and snippy 14-year-olds have a way of becoming human again. Some of my best memories and their best memories are in cell phone free environments. So I don't know, I'm kind of new here, but I think this may be one of the most impactful decisions that this board in my time has made towards positive culture in our school district. And I just want to recognize that, because in an awarding of a contract like this, we are selecting a path towards saving lives and reducing anxiety. And I'm really for this. I think if there's one thing I can do for the health of this community, this could be that one thing. And so I applaud you for your work as a school district. And you specifically, I heard your presentation last night at Milwaukee. It's even better today, I'm going to say.
It gets better every time.
Get better every time. Are you having a residency at the Sphere in Vegas on this topic? I mean, come on. But honestly, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at. And I respect that you would totally agree. I want that for you too. But this is where I'm at. I trust that the school district will practice this sort of true north experience where we see where we're going. There's an iterative process to answer all of those questions and those individual building questions, and that very, very thoughtful question about what about the transport back and forth to Sabin-Schellenberger. What a great question. I'm confident that school district will work through that, develop a solution. It'll work. So that's where I'm at on it. And thank you for all of this and appreciate your time tonight.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. And I'm sure as we delve into this and this is going to be brought up at a future board meeting. I'm sure there'll be more questions between now and then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is authorization to purchase K-12 decodable books. I welcome again Assistant Superintendent Yvonne Dibley, who will introduce our guest.
All right. Well, directors, you approved a purchase for decodable books on June 9th of 2022. Decodable books are a routine purchase aligned to supplement district adopted curriculum and aim to support our readers strategically. Because of the amount of the purchase, as we heard earlier on in the presentation, we seek your action this evening. Jen Burkhart, who is the coordinator in elementary programs and oversees literacy, and I can answer any questions you may have.
All right, directors, is there a presentation or no?
No.
There's not one, right? Okay. So I was like, I don't see a PowerPoint.
No
So-
PowerPoints. You've
So I-
already approved purchases like this.
All
It's
right.
over the amount, we're bringing it forward.
Awesome. Do we have a motion to approve? Because there is no PowerPoint.
Okay, Chair, I make a motion to approve staff recommendation that the board grant advance authorization to the superintendent to enter into contracts to purchase decodable books from Benchmark Education through a cooperative contract. The amount of the purchase is not to exceed $290,000.
Is there a second?
Walker, second.
All right, it's been properly moved by Vice Chair Wei, seconded by Director Walker. Is there any discussion? Excellent. We will call, since this is about money, we need to do a roll call. Director Dobson.
Aye.
Director Walker.
Aye.
Director Wei.
Aye.
And Director Benaloga, aye. It's 4-0, motion passes. And our authorization to purchase K-2 classroom book decodables, library books, and flexible classroom furniture. I welcome again Superintendent Yvonne Dibley.
Thank you. Correction on that title. It should just be the classroom library books.
Oh.
And actually it is for 3-5. So Joel Stewart, so just to make sure on that, Joel Stewart has brought forward to the board the purchase of K-2 libraries in the past. And there has been a shared desire to enhance the libraries for 3-5 or for students in our 3rd through 5th grade. But as you know, funding has been limited. With the literacy grant and some money from the student investment account, we are able to purchase high interest, culturally relevant and developmentally appropriate books for our students in 3rd through 5th grade. Like the previous item, the purchase amount we seek, because of the purchase amount, we seek your action this evening, and Jen and I are happy to answer any questions.
All right, is there any comments or questions or discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant the advanced authorization to the superintendent to enter into the contracts to purchase inclusive 3rd to 5th classroom library books from Follett School Solution via a One Government Procurement Alliance cooperative contract. The amount of the purchase is not to exceed $370,000.
Is there a second?
Dobson, second.
It's been properly moved by Director Walker and seconded by Director Dobson. Is there any discussion? I will call for a roll call vote. Director Dobson.
Aye.
Director Walker.
Aye.
Director Benaloga. Aye. And Director Wei.
Aye.
Calling on myself. I'm getting tired. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Superintendent's contract is our last item on the agenda tonight. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you. That was quick. We have I first just want to just briefly say I want to thank the board for entrusting Director Wei and I to work on the contract for Shay, and we are happy to offer and to have her here for another 3 years. She had a glowing review by this board, and we know she has been a wonderful captain to this ship. And I just want to say that when we talked about this contract, we talked about this contract in a way that compensates her and also cares for her, because she cares for the district and puts her arms around us every day. And and raises student voice and elevates our staff and just has a magic touch. So we are very appreciative for that. So is there any discussion about the contract? Excellent. Is there a motion to approve?
Chair, I make a recommendation to approve the 3-year contract with Superintendent Shay James through June 30th, 2027.
Is there a second?
Wachter, second.
It's been properly moved by Director Way and seconded by Director Wachter. I will call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor, aye. Aye. All those opposed? Excellent. The motion passes 4-0. And at the essence of time, yes. Excellent, excellent. It is now 9:42 PM and the public meeting of North Clackamas School District Board of Directors is adjourned. Have a good evening.